This story began with our protagonist Raoul, who defeated the Demon King and became the hero, unaware of the fact that kind people were easily taken advantage of. He believed that now the world would be peaceful. But the moment he got back, his consciousness woke up to witness the sight of the Princess Victoria betraying him and putting him on a cross. She stated that now that the Demon King was dead, the royal family had only one possible threat, which was none other than hero Raoul. Victoria had given him a choice before to serve under her as her puppet. But since he declined it, Victoria wanted to make him realize how serious of a crime it was to reject her, the Princess Victoria. It took a time for hero Raoul to know that everyone around wanted him dead all of a sudden. They began attacking him with all sorts of attacks, while keeping a restraint on his powers. Ruak was suffering an immensely painful death, and his last words were that he would see to each and everyone's death who were present here. Raoul swore to show them despair mercilessly, and most of all, kill this bloody princess who dared to trick him along with other traitors. After Raoul died, he passed away to the White World where he started from. It was a realm he was quite familiar with, as he saw it before being reborn to that world. The goddess of love welcomed him warm-heartedly and hugged while showing empathy that he must have suffered a lot. Raoul shook off the goddess and asked how she felt after watching him die in vain like that. The goddess of love, Lulu, felt really excited after she was shaken off like that. She begged to be tortured by him even more and offered to give him strength in return. Raoul came closer as he mentioned that if her regret and love was real, then the goddess should prove it by resurrecting him and letting him wipe out those bastards. After 1 year from that day, in the kingdom of Kurz at Auerbach Castle, all the maids were adoring their Princess Victoria, who seemed to be polite but emotionless in front of others. The maids asked her if she liked the dress made by tailors especially for this day. They tried to tell the princess how good this pure white dress was for her beautiful blonde hair, but Victoria remained strict and she hit the tailor with a wand to be silent. Victoria asked her if her eyes were hollow, or if she just liked to crawl on the ground. Victoria wasn't hesitant to show her disgusted evil sight to them, and she started beating them for no reason while saying this dress was not up to her liking. The tailor told her that this dress was given to her by Emil. After hearing that, she stopped beating the tailor, and other maids were totally scared from that sight. Victoria didn't care who it was from, and they should have fetched her a different dress to change into. The maids lowered their heads in agreement, and Victoria ordered them to clean up the unsightly maid she just beated. All the maids moved at once on her order, while her faithful servant named Sandler figured it was a bad sign for the princess' departure. Recently, there had been many incidents from 1 month of the soldiers on the gates were annihilated. Other than that, during a clear day, more soldiers mysteriously died with not just a pool of blood but a large pool of water left behind as well. The Royal Order of Chivalry had been desperately investigating, but they were unable to find out a single thing about the culprit, not even whether it was a person or a demon. But aside from that, Sandler respected Victoria and her breathtaking beauty. She asked Sandler what was wrong, after which he reported to her that the current situation didn't seem safe enough, so he requested her to reconsider the parade. Sandler claimed he won't be able to live on if something were to happen to her. Victoria agrees that might be true, but even so, if there were to be a single scratch on her skin, then she would eradicate the whole order of chivalry responsible for protecting her. Sandler bowed down on his knee and then tried to inform her about their strong gatekeepers, which were defeated without any signs of resistance. So, preparing for the worst-case scenario was the Order of Chivalry. Not only that, but the leaders of their country have been dying one after the other to some unknown disease. It was as if they were cursed, but even if Sandler explained it seriously, Victoria showed no interest in these unsightly things. She didn't care who died or not until it had something to do with her. Sandler added that all the sick victims were repeating the same words, while they had a high fever, that blessed their highness the princess. Victoria showed her attitude, and considered it as one of admirable acts of loyalty towards her, but the murder case of gatekeepers was still mysterious to them. Sandler mentioned that he could feel there was a link between these events, so he again asked Victoria if she could at least postpone the parade until they captured the culprit. She replied there was nothing to fear for them now, since the Demon King and the hero were both dead. She despised showing any fear, and besides that, they had plenty of shields in the parade. Victoria was a selfish person who thought of her knights as only her shield, and believed they ought to protect her as she was the country's sacred treasure. Sandler knew she was extremely cruel, but in front of her beauty, Sandler couldn't help but keep serving her. So, Sandler agreed to become her shield like she said, and soon on the parade day, the princess arrived at the parade. The people congratulated Princess Victoria for her wedding, and they waved their hands to her. whereas Victoria and her fiancé Emil were waving back with smiles. Victoria was too full of herself in the parade, as she liked hearing more and more good about herself and her beauty. Victoria was selfish enough to even tell her fiancé Emil that she was the one this attention was for, and Emil just sheep-talked into agreeing with whatever she said. Prince Emil was the eldest son of Christiana's family. He seemed to be a good-looking person, who was totally over heels for Victoria. However, she had already made it clear to Emil that she had no complaints towards his social status, but being her marriage partner needed more than that. Emil replied that his mother was elated to hear that he was marrying Victoria, and so this marriage was for his mother's happiness only. Victoria felt like she would have to constantly listen to Emil's disgusting mama's boy nonsense from now on endlessly. But even so, it was a trivial thing in the face of Victoria's ambition. She wanted to have a baby for her ambition, and make him handle the throne to seize the sovereignty of the whole country. So, Emil was only an instrument for her, which was somewhat favorable to her. She thought that Emil's looks were fortunately somewhat fine, since if the boy she had turned out to be ugly, she might have to kill it. So, a man with nothing to praise besides his face being her husband was a bit of a hard pill she was ready to take. Besides that, Victoria figured if she only cared about the looks, she would have chosen Hero for herself. She remembered the first day when Raoul introduced himself to her and declared to defeat the Demon King, and even if he were to die, he would make sure to bring peace back to the kingdom world. Victoria saw Raoul as just a simple, kind-hearted, and foolish man who somehow still had a powerful grace. Those honest eyes of his were totally a big curiosity trigger for Victoria, and she just wanted to defile them like her plaything. But now in the present, Victoria was playing cool on the outside, while inside she was thinking of Raoul, who was her absolute favorite, and his quick death was too harsh by her own hands. She couldn't forget Raoul's face of despair when he was about to be executed on her orders. She wished he wouldn't have refused to become hers, but keeping that aside, the Royal Order of Chivalry managed to escort the Princess Victoria and the Prince Emil to the altar. Sandler thought everything was going well, and with this marriage, Victoria got the elite force of Emil's family, which pledged their allegiance to Victoria. On this day, everything was going just as Victoria planned it to be, and when some people asked Victoria to take a look at them, she figured it won't be a problem, so Victoria turned and gave an innocent smile, making those people's heart flutter, unaware of how cruel of a person she was in reality. They hailed the princess to live a long life, and Victoria felt like this world was all hers now. She wanted to continue and seize everything, aside from that man, the hero. Her greed knows no bounds, and then Emil held her hand as they went up to the altar. Now, priests got prepared and stood up to start the wedding. Firstly, the priest began with requesting the god to grant this couple eternal happiness, and the other priest also wished the same but somewhat rephrased it to request God to try saving these two happiness. Victoria felt like she was on top of the world as the marriage was progressing with her praises and being blessed in front of so many people. Hearing the announcements, Victoria thought this was the beginning of her glory days, but she was unaware of just what was coming right up, as one of the priests smirked and phrased again blessings for Her Highness, the princess, instead of moving forward. Victoria recalled she heard these exact same words just before, but soon, a lot of blood splattered all over her face. She remembered the reports from Sandler that all the victims repeated the same words, while they had a really high fever. The priests all ended up dead right in front of Victoria, but they still kept on repeating those words to the end. She wondered if this was a mere coincidence or if the only person right in front of her took off the hood and revealed his face. Victoria could never forget those jet black hairs and red eyes that looked like they were on fire. Victoria couldn't believe her eyes at all, while Raoul just stood up and greeted the princess asking how she was doing, but clearly he wanted to make the answer real bad himself. Victoria was terrified after seeing him, because it was impossible for a dead person to be alive. Then Raoul answered her question that he just resurrected from the depths of hell to come and see his dear, and take sweet revenge on all of them who betrayed him. The hero Raoul. Victoria kept repeating her words while stuttering, whereas Raoul was just pleased on the starting of his revenge. He resurrected again, when he was talking with the goddess at that time. The goddess was a masochist for him, and she just wanted to be scolded by Raoul, the guy she fell hard for. Raoul understood that she was an insane goddess. He remembered back to the time when he met with the goddess for the first time, and introduced himself as Raoul Evans to her. She was the one who reincarnated him into another world, and Raoul told her that he would be the one to become savior and bring peace to the world. He used to mean those words before, but in the present none of it mattered anymore after what happened to him. And Raoul figured that at some point, this goddess of love started calling him as her beloved one. He asked the goddess if all of this happened according to her wishes, to which she straight up declined, and she herself didn't expect the humans to kill their own savior. Raoul believed her words, and then Raoul held her chin and told her to memorize the true nature of the humans she wanted to save, and never forget just what kind of fate Raoul suffered as the savior. The goddess admitted that she made a mistake in her judgment, and no longer brought them salvation. Raoul asked her if she still loved those people, to which the goddess replied that the only one she loved was Raoul. Raoul got what the goddess was like now, so he understood that to get what he wanted, he had to give the goddess what she would love to have. She reached out her hands as she looked at those eyes that carry a strong will, a fearless look with the power that could control the world if he felt it, and everything else which was special to her. Raoul felt her words, and he also realized that he might be able to make some use of these feelings of goddess. He asked the goddess if she meant what she said. She should lend him her power and resurrect him, so that he could take revenge for his death and betrayal. The goddess was a bit shocked to hear that, as Raoul asked her if she couldn't do that much. The goddess admitted she could do it, but her job was to make sure to cleanse every soul before sending it to the ground no matter what. Not only that, but if she were to violate that rule, she would lose her position as the goddess. Raoul mentioned clearly that he doesn't care about all those gods' rules, and all he wanted to know is if she can or cannot do that. He looked at her expression and said that must be the extent of her feelings towards him. The goddess felt a little oppressed, which made her feel ticklish inside. Then she slowly relieved her eyes in agreement, and Raoul knew he just needed to push her a little more by any means to get what he wanted. So, he went closer to the goddess and mentioned not expecting her to be this reluctant, even if she was the one he had to go through a miserable experience. The goddess apologized, knowing he was right about it. Then Raoul told her that he still had desires, so he asked her for the other power of his, which she sealed off. The goddess exclaimed in nervousness that she couldn't do that, since it was the power of darkness he was asking for, and it was meant to destroy and take away everything, even consuming him by the darkness. Raoul knew that he wouldn't be consumed, and aside from that, this wasn't the first time he would get it. And the moment he got this power of darkness was when he had to witness the death of his loved ones, and in that moment, he ceased being a human. The goddess asked him why don't he just live happily together with her, and enjoy this paradise for eternity. To which Raoul replied that if he really wanted to feel happy, it would only come at the time when he gets to watch those bastards suffer. Raoul wanted to get rid of the trash in this world, and the goddess realized that he was going to take the path of carnage. He admitted she was right about it, as he wished to purge this world by his own hands. The goddess felt a little tremble, but it was because she loved Raoul even if he was being so dark and dominant. That only came to her as beautiful. Raoul understood that the goddess was a crazy pervert after all. He asked the goddess to grant her wish, and the goddess claimed that his happiness was her happiness. Raoul got closer to her face and kissed her deeply as they started making out with each other. He was bold while going at it, after which Raoul got back his powers after he made the goddess happy. Raoul was glad to have his powers back, and the next part was to be resurrected. He asked the goddess to hurry up and do it, while the goddess said she would do whatever he asked of her, and granted to send him back to the ground with her utmost blessings. Raoul was surely glad to have those blessings, and with this, Raoul was about to start a new legend with him not being just a hero, but an anti-hero, to deal with dirty people with his darkness. With this, he began the purge of this world at the same moment when he arrived. After that, he went around looking for information, and heard from the guards about the princess's wedding reception in a month. They told him that entering the royal capital was a strict no during this time, so he should turn around and head back. Raoul didn't hesitate to kill any of them, and he replied quite cruelly to this warm welcome by those soldiers, who didn't recognize the hero. That was when he set the princess's wedding as his next wedding. Now in the present, Raoul informed the Princess Victoria that it had been a month since he was reincarnated, and while Victoria was seeing blood all around her body, Raoul had been waiting for this day impatiently, as Victoria made such pretty scared faces. He expected nothing less than that, from the princess who thought others' lives were filthy, and now it was about time he started with her. He approached Victoria himself, then her commander Sandler intervened and claimed the deaths of priests won't be in vain, and also that he won't let the princess be harmed by a demon who looks like the hero, who was already long dead. Raoul thought everything Sandler said was trash talk, and said the priests he killed were just some corrupt trash who just take advantage of the offerings from their believers. Those priests used to mark those who don't pay them as the followers of demons and punish them harshly for it, and sometimes even execution. He mentioned just how many tortures from water torturing and crotch splitting were committed by them to those sacrificed people. Sandler didn't have anything to say on that, and Victoria told him to focus on her instead of being coaxed into Raoul's talking. Sandler asked Raoul to show his true form, thinking it was a demon, and Raoul made it clear that this was indeed his true form. Sandler exclaimed it was a lie, since he must be already dead right now, but nothing he said made any difference to Raoul. Raoul just took it easy, as he knew they wouldn't believe him, and continuing this conversation would just bore him out. Now, he wanted to get started with, so Raoul just closed in himself onto the princess, and pulled her hairs to prove to her up close that he was indeed the real deal. Sandler panicked after seeing their princess in danger, so he quickly charged at Raoul to get his filthy hands off her. Raoul asked them all if they thought they would be able to defeat him with such toys. He called them hilarious, and suddenly Sandler heard the splatter sounds from behind, which were produced from the soldiers who were decapitated in a moment. The blood of those soldiers fell over all the spectators on the sides, and it created a situation of pin-drop silence for a moment, until they started running away from this chaos. Everyone feared for their lives, and after seeing this, Raoul started laughing since these ugly subjects were now running for their lives. However, he declared to all of them that there was nowhere for them to run. Raoul called for everyone's attention and ordered them to stop right where they stood and look over his position. People could feel the pressure and tension from Raoul's order, and they stopped from fear, as Raoul asked them to watch carefully since the show was about to get more exciting now. He stomped his feet on the altar, and carried the princess towards the front of all these spectators, claiming that they would now be watching an extremely rare spectacle starring the princess. Raoul knows these people love watching dramas, mostly of other people suffering at the hands of their princess, so he told them to appreciate standing at their positions unless he told them to. The people exclaimed at him to free them, as they had nothing to do with this. They were scared for their lives, and all of this was making Raoul laugh with fun, until Princess Victoria shouted out loud to all the people to be silent. She asked why the hell were they panicking, despite being her people. Victoria told them that this guy was just a demon posing as the hero. The people's chatters only increased after that, although in a lower voice amongst each other. Victoria made a disgusting proud face, whereas Raoul claimed that he was not a monster. He pulled Victoria's hairs tighter if she heard him clearly, and confessed that he had been reborn, so she should calm down and accept reality instead of panicking herself. Victoria asked Sandler what the hell was he doing, and just killed this person already. Then Sandler informed her about his legs being frozen in one place because of Raoul's magic. Victoria told him that was no big deal, and he could just chop off his legs and save her instead. Sandler knew that would be a bit too much. Then Raoul exclaimed they were not allowed to do anything outside of what he envisioned according to his plan. Sandler told him that he won't let him make any move on the princess. Raoul knows that Sandler was actually not male, but a female knight, who was upright and pure, but he knew about her true form. So, Raoul proceeded with the acts of treating the princess the way she deserved. She kept calling him a pest, an insolent fiend, while Raoul looked over in another direction and saw that her so-called fiancé Emil was sitting on the ground with just fear to be described with. Emil was so scared that he ended up wetting his pants. Now Raoul recalled that since this parade was for marriage announcements, he should make the husband join in the fun as well. He used his magic on Emil to manipulate his body according to his wishes. Raoul pulled Emil closer to the princess and latched onto her. Victoria was disgusted by Emil acting vile, while Emil was continuously begging for his mother to come and save him. Victoria was shamed in front of everyone, since the people saw her so-called fiancé begging like a baby, and this scene turned out to be more fun than Raoul expected, so he couldn't stop laughing non-stop at the mother complex of Victoria's husband. He made Emil go and hold Victoria's arms from behind, which made Sandler yell at Emil to let go of the princess. Raoul was enjoying this scene of setting the stage for his revenge, and now all the actors for his play were here. Raoul asked the princess why she was wearing a red dress at her marriage instead of white. He stated that the color of blood won't look good on a pretty red dress, so he decided to help out a little by holding her dress and tearing it apart right in front of everyone, to the point that Victoria was dressless in public. Her fearful eyes widened by the sight of all those people in the public looking at her with their dirty thoughts, and while they were enjoying the show, Victoria screamed no with her full voice. She was surely being put to her limit of tolerating this. Then Victoria asked Raoul just what was he going to do to her now. Raoul knew the real character of the princess and what she wanted, so he opened his mouth and confirmed with her that she wanted the children. Raoul stated it would be perfect for the main event, while Victoria's face went expressionless there except plain fear. She asked with her unreserved face if he was planning to get a virginity in front of all these people. Raoul figured she was not far from the level of disappointment he guessed. Victoria exclaimed that she wouldn't let her body be touched by a lowly person like him. She threatened him if he knew what would happen if he dared to touch her body, while reminding him what he went through on his previous death. Raoul stated that she finally recognized him as the hero, after all, so he offered that he might forgive her if she knelt and apologized to him. Raoul mentioned she must know her place right now. Then Sandler shouted at Raoul to fight them honorably instead of doing cowardly acts like this. This statement was what pissed off Raoul the most, so he glared back at Sandler with the coldest death stares and asked if she just said honorably. He asked Sandler if she had forgotten just what means they used to capture him before. In the past, before the Demon King's subjugation, the people of Macaulay Village used to be very kind to the hero Raoul and his party. Raoul was happy and he greeted them in the morning with a smile on his face, and when the people got to hear from him that he would be departing soon, the villagers prepared a feast from them to send Raoul off to his mission to restore the peace to the world. It was not only the adults of the village, but the kids also loved the hero Raoul, and they would give him whatever they could, like bread, which was precious to those kids. They wished that Raoul would be successful in defeating the Demon King and come back again to play with them. Raoul replied to them brightly and claimed that he would surely be back. But later on, around the time after Raoul defeated the Demon King, Sandler informed the subjugation being successful to the Princess Victoria, and she immediately gave her next order to capture Raoul. She ordered Sandler to find out the village that the hero was connected with a lot, and Sandler thought she wanted to use those villages as hostage. But the reality was even worse when Victoria ordered for the villagers to be killed as brutally as possible. She couldn't care less how Sandler and army would do that, as Victoria wanted all of them, including the women and even children, to be skewered. She was interested to see just what kind of face Raoul would make after that. Later on, by the time Raoul went back to the Macaulay village after subjugating the Demon King, he was shocked by the unbearable sight of villagers lying dead around the whole village. Their corpses clearly demonstrated how brutally they were murdered, and it also included the child who gave him bread before. When traumatized, Raoul was in the middle of trying to figure out why this happened. Suddenly the soldiers came and surrounded Raoul to seize him. It started to make some sense to Raoul at that time, and now back in the present, he told Sandler that he knows all of that must have happened on her commands. Sandler claimed it was not her fault, and she didn't even deem it as a crime, because she was just one of the princess knights who was faithfully carrying out her orders. She exclaimed that it was righteous in her eyes to commit a massacre if it was for the sake of justice, while the dressless Princess Victoria shouted at Sandler to stop speaking. But as Sandler kept confessing, Raoul used magic to make her voice louder, as Sandler confessed that princess orders were absolute, and others' lives were worth nothing more than trash before hers. So, Sandler stated that those villagers must be yearning for their deaths as well, if it was for the princess's sake. Sandler noticed that her voice was suddenly louder, and Raoul claimed that he simply amplified it a little, to make sure that her confession would reach the ears of the masses present in the spectators. Meanwhile, Victoria, who was bound behind Raoul, was standing with her head lower, because her crimes were exposed right in front of all the people. The people were all shocked to hear just what the princess did, and it was a shocking revelation to them, because they were told that the Macaulay massacre was the hero's doing, and in that massacre some people even lost their family who lived there. They thought it was Victoria who avenged their deaths by subjugating the hero Raoul. Victoria's eyes were speaking for the amount of anger she was feeling, as she yelled at Sandler for going off and mouthing off her unnecessary shit. Raoul kept laughing while calling this a masterpiece, and then he decided to have some more fun. He used magic to control the body of Sandler this time, and in the next moment, Victoria received a heavy punch straight to her face by Sandler. Sandler was shocked to her spines to realize what her body was doing, whereas the person in more shock was Victoria, yelled out at Sandler for this insolence and breaking her teeth and destroying her beautiful face. Sandler cried out while saying her body moved by itself. Raoul enjoyed the sound of the last punch, while Emil was scared like before. Raoul wanted more of those punches, so he made Sandler keep punching Victoria again and again. And no matter how much Sandler or Victoria wanted it to be stopped, Raoul was mercilessly standing there controlling everything on the show. By the time he stopped Victoria's torture, her face got bigger from her own cushions from the swelling. Victoria yelled that this act was unforgettable, while Raoul agreed that he surely won't forget this show at all. Sandler was left afraid from what she was made to do, while Victoria begged for her face to not be attacked at least. Raoul agreed that he should now leave her face, but instead head to the finale of his act. The finale act was the revenge Raoul wanted to take, and make Victoria atone for killing his older sister. Just before the subjugation of the Demon King, Raoul's sister was praying to the goddess for his goodwill. Raoul told her that her body was no longer hers, but the baby she was pregnant with. So, she should worry more about herself than Raoul right now. She said Raoul was surely worrying more about her, so doing the same was natural. She claimed that this church was made by a saint, so praying here would surely grant Raoul protection. Raoul already knew what his sister was going to say, and he told her that she can't speak for others right now. She started scolding him a little and let her worry about her brother. Both of them liked to spend time with each other, and before going, Raoul saw her off and the baby in her womb. He whispered to the baby that next time they meet, the baby would be born already. Now, Raoul's sister told him it was time for him to set off for his job. Raoul agreed with her, and she gave her little brother a kiss on his head. After that, they saw him off while praying for his happiness and protection from dangers he was going to face. But by the time they captured Hero Macaulay village, it didn't take them long to bring him to the Princess Victoria. She was laughing at him that time, while stating it was surely easier than she thought to catch him. Raoul asked her what was the meaning of all of this, and just under what offense he was captured. That was the time when Victoria showed her true colors, that his existence was the crime itself, since now that the Demon King was subjugated, they don't need him anymore. Raoul couldn't understand if that was the case, then why did she have to burn down the village, along with innocent people there? To which Victoria simply replied that it was not her doing, but instead Raoul's doing, implying that he would be the one known to the public for burning down that village. Victoria told him if he only became hers, she could save him, and for starters, she let him know that she didn't dislike the look in those eyes of his. Victoria wanted to defile him more and more, so she asked Sandler and soldiers to take Raoul away somewhere. Raoul asked just what was she going to do now, to which she replied he would be able to watch the fantastic show she prepared for him. While the hero was being taken behind Victoria, he smelled a scent of the church and some blood, and Victoria asked him to raise his head now. When Raoul raised his head, he saw a terrifying sight of his older sister lying there dead with 3 swords stabbed into her body. Raoul was broken at that point, as he remembered his dear older sister once wished for the hero Raoul, his brother, to carry her baby in his arms. So, now in the present, Raoul couldn't even a tiny bit of suffering he felt go without taking revenge for it. He lost his precious older sister because of this Victoria, so Raoul wanted to see through for her to atone for killing her. Victoria asked what he was planning to do now, then suddenly she felt magic being used on her body, or more precisely, her womb. Raoul was doing his best to suppress his anger to not kill Victoria just yet, and just keep torturing her more and more, as he clenched his fist to use the magic. In the next moment, Victoria, who was being exhibited in front of everyone, felt something below her stomach being damaged. Raoul exclaimed that finally her treachery had been extinguished, as the thing Violet wanted most could no longer be achieved. She coughed up a lot of blood, while feeling the pain inside her stomach, and crawled on the ground. Emil was scared to his guts, while Victoria was on the ground squeezing in pain. She shouted that her stomach hurts like hell, then Raoul warned her that if she screamed, she might die from excessive bleeding. He stopped her bleeding for now, because if she were to die now, it would be boring revenge for him. Raoul asked her if it was still hurting, then Victoria yelled at him for causing her to suffer. She said that she won't ever forget him for causing this much pain. Raoul told her that she was just reaping what she showed herself, and now she was just getting retribution for her misdeeds. He didn't think an eye for an eye was not wrong, and then he remembered something he almost forgot. He looked at the soldiers and said they should also be excited to get a truly miserable death they deserve. So, for now, he released everyone and declared this show over for today. He praised everyone for their great work to make this show so funny for him, and everyone felt released from the continuous pressure and invisible confinement of fear. Sandler was left hollowed to see her princess in a situation like this. Meanwhile, Victoria still seemed to be disgusting through and through, as she yelled out at everyone to kill Raoul, otherwise she would punish them. Raoul saw that she still had some guts to bark orders. The soldiers had no choice but to attack Raoul for the sake of their highness, and they managed to attack Raoul with their swords. Their swords pierced through Raoul's body, and when Victoria saw him cough up some blood, she burst into proud laughter. She told him that he should take a look at him now, as this was what would happen to anyone who opposed her. Victoria thought she killed him, and wanted him to repent for what he did to her, whereas Raoul just cleaned some of that blood from his face and sighed. He asked Victoria if she already forgot. He was the hero, and as he fixed his hairs, Raoul claimed that he won't die to some skewers like this. Victoria was left shocked from this sight, whereas Raoul just casually standing there stating it was truly unfortunate for them to see that he couldn't meet their expectations for him to die just yet. He took out the swords from his body and then pointed it at Victoria. Raoul told her that he would be back once she gets her pretty face like before. Victoria couldn't move an inch from that sword pointed at her throat, and then Raoul just throwed the sword between Emil's legs and left from there, leaving a casual "see you later." And while he was leaving, Raoul turned to look at her and left a message for Victoria that he congratulated her for the wedding. Victoria was looking really disgusting, unlike the pretty face before, as if her inside ugliness could now be seen on her face. He also left a formal blessing for her, like the way he used to back then. Now, after Raoul was done there, he went to the church where his older sister died. He brought some flowers along and went to the exact same spot where she passed away. Raoul apologized for being so late to visit his elder sister. He left those flowers at that spot, and some blood markings could still be seen around the floor. Once he was done paying his respects, Raoul stood up to leave, and the father of this church could be seen naked on the tables. Raoul had killed that guy, and once he went outside, Raoul looked up at this church for the final time and burned it all down with magic. The church was engulfed in his flames, as he had no wish to return there for a second time. And during that, surprisingly, Raoul saw his sister's soul in the flames, looking at him with a smile. Raoul could feel that her soul would now be able to rest in peace, and started laughing at himself to be able to see ghosts. He figured it was good in the end, and he wished for her sister's soul to rest in peace without worrying about him, while he would keep the whole royal capital in uproar. The people were on the brink of rebelling against the princess out of suspicion, and on the contrary, those who believed in the princess were cowering in fear. He was now the most wanted person in this kingdom. But Raoul was more happy about how several healers from around the country were summoned to tend to Victoria, but he made sure that they wouldn't be able to fully heal Victoria's belly. Raoul also made sure to put up a barrier around the royal capital, so not a single soul could escape his wrath. He stated that the priest who sold out his sister was also dead now, and he had killed him even before the parade could begin. It was truly fascinating for him to plot something like disguising himself as the priest and surprising the princess. Raoul's sister's soul was smiling, and then Raoul stated that the priest's name was Gustav, and he lived in a massive palatial mansion which he got by squeezing money out of his believers. He was shocked when he saw Raoul still alive, and when Raoul saw him, he lost control because this guy was after all the reason behind his sister's death. Gustav had begged for mercy for his life, and he even said he would give him money or anything he got by ripping off his believers. But he had no reply when Raoul asked him if he could return his sister back to him, and thus Raoul killed him in the most painful way through the water torture technique he loved to use on the executed ones. Raoul then assured his sister's soul that he was not exactly doing this for her, but there wasn't just any reason to leave someone like that alive who abused the sense of justice. He despised people like that from the bottom of his heart and simply took the absolute revenge he wished. And by absolute, he meant that he won't leave even a single person involved and definitely massacre every damned one of those despicable people. Raoul stated if he were to be the way he was before, he might have shown some mercy, but now he won't show any mercy to anyone. After that, his big sister's soul rested in peace, and seeing that she was gone, Raoul smiled as he said the last goodbye to her. After that, he declared that this was the start of the second act for this comedy stage he was setting up, with a look more terrifying than demons. After some time passed, in the Auerbach Castle's prison, sounds of hitting someone could be heard from a cell. The person who was being tortured was Sandler, and the hitter was obviously the Princess Victoria. She called Sandler a good-for-nothing, who wasn't able to cut off her legs to protect her back then. Sandler tried to apologize to her, but Victoria exclaimed while hitting her with a whip again that her apology was not worth even a single strand of her hair. Sandler's mouth was also loosely closed with a cloth, as the princess kept hitting her again and again to take out all her anger and frustration on Sandler. Ever since that incident, she had been unable to leave the castle, kill people, or do anything, as if she had been cursed. She thought of her soldiers like pigs, and thus Victoria kept torturing her as much she wanted. After that, Victoria went off while telling other soldiers to keep torturing Sandler like that. The soldiers replied they couldn't even touch or land any hit on Sandler, as if there was a barrier. Victoria released an order for all the soldiers to capture the hero immediately, or better, just kill him the moment they see him and make sure to bring back his head. Meanwhile, in another land, a soldier was on his way to go towards their only ally who could cross swords with the hero. They figured that they must deliver this secret message to him quickly, but while going on his way in the forest, he confronted some goblins at the worst possible time. The soldier knew it would take much time to deal with these goblins, but since there was no other choice, he pointed his blade at them. Suddenly, a huge goblin showed up from behind him with a wooden log in his hand. The goblin swung down his heavy log at the messenger. Then it was stopped by the bare hands of a man who jumped in to save the messenger. The guy asked the messenger if he was all right, and the messenger recognized that this person who saved his life was Lord Brown, the person he came here to report the message to. Brown told the soldier to stay close to him, and then he stood out his sword to cut down all of the goblins around them within mere seconds. The soldier was amazed to see how he took so many in an instant, which proved that he wasn't just called the greatest swordsman in the country for nothing. Brown told the soldier that he would no longer remain the prey of a goblin, and he was truly glad that he himself got a prey, referring to the soldier with a smirk. After that, Brown was eating dinner on the table with his family, and he told his sons that he would be going to the royal capital the next day. The kids could guess that he must be going there to hunt down that rumored resurrected hero. Brown figured the news spread really fast, and agreed they were right, as he got an Imperial Guard to come to him this morning, and informed him that they wanted him to handle the hero. The kids were enchanted to hear that, and they asked him to handle the hero in the most merciless way, while wishing they could have been joined as well. But the kids would have to wait until a year passed. Then Brown stated that a year would pass in the blink of an eye. He told them until then, they should focus on their training. The kids were happy, and seeing them, Brown's wife giggled and said that he was really soft on his son Kanai. Brown stated that he would be looking forward to the day they could fight together, and they seemed to be promising for sure. Then one of his servants asked him what they should do about that messenger's meal they prepared. The other servants apologized to Master Brown for the inconvenience, and said this guy just started working here recently, so he didn't know things like this. Brown replied that the messenger was worried about the royal capital, so he must have already departed, and the meal prepared for him won't be necessary anymore. He asked those two to withdraw. Then a special servant of his brought a meal and called out Master Brown to inform him that the main dish was ready. Brown was delighted to see it was finally ready, and the cook served that main dish Brown was waiting for. The aroma of that dish was irresistible for him, and it looked really well prepared and cooked. He liked having this dish to eat more than anything else before a battle. His sons asked their father if they could have a taste of it as well, to which Brown replied that he already told them that they must hunt their own prey, just like how he hunted this meal by himself today. After saying that, Brown dug in to eat the food, and as he was taking the first bite of the food, his sons and wife were watching how delicious it looked to bite. Whereas, Brown got moved by the taste of this meal, which was just scrumptious enough to give him off the taste of victory. After having that dish, he thanked the messenger for his hard work, but in reality, he was paying respects to that messenger. Next day, Brown got ready with his soldiers to be off towards the royal capital, and they marched towards their way, while his sons wished him to bring back the hero's head. After that, they got back to hunting with a so-called toy of theirs as well. Later on, they spilled the blood of their target, which turned out to be a small kobold. The kids were practicing by hitting this kobold, and Connie stated they could just kill it because their father would bring a new monster later on. The kids attacked the kobold again and again, but when it started to defend itself, they attacked the kobold with a magic attack. The kobold started running, and the kids were in no mood to let it outrun them. They kept attacking the poor kobold with magic again and again, until one of them hit it. The kobold fell down and it was too exhausted to be able to move, while those kids were standing above it. They were excited to see its finish, and just then, a shadow of a guy appeared behind them. He called those kids stinking brats, who were so consumed in playing with fire. The guy was none other than the hero Raoul, as he asked the kids to let him in the fun as well. After that, Raoul was enjoying the weather while sitting in the backyard of Brown's mansion, the very house of the guy who went to the capital to hunt him down. He heard the warnings of those kids to untie them, otherwise their father would kill him ruthlessly. They claimed proudly that their father was General Brown. Then Raoul asked them if they were feeling energetic enough to bark like that. They might as well dig holes with those other guys. Raoul ordered all of those servants of Brown to keep digging for some reason. He stated that he would be going to give them a special duty afterwards, so they were ought to sit quietly for now. The kids knew it wouldn't be in their best interest to say anything now. Then one of the servants came while stating that they found what they were looking for. Raoul was happy to hear that, and he went to check out the hole, and it had bones of a person inside it. Raoul was glad to have some results, and then he announced to everyone that Enrico the stable boy was 1 point ahead of others in this game now. The servant told him that these bones were all. Then Raoul told him to not lie, and this was nowhere near enough. He was sure that there must be many other people killed in this castle. Then another servant came and informed him that they found another one. This time, the corpse they found still had some flesh on it. Raoul took the servant who said there weren't more bones, and showed this wild evidence to him. Raoul saw there were many chunks of tongue, so he asked the servant if the General Brown ate meat yesterday as well. The servant tried to lie, but Raoul rotated his head and then he told those servants that he was aware about the money these people make by taking people apart and then cleaning up afterwards. He figured it was no surprise that these servants were just as rotten. Then the kids exclaimed that his cockiness wouldn't last long, because once their father arrived he would send Raoul off to the underworld. Raoul could see that these kids were surely pretty confident, and behind him, there was General Brown's wife hiding behind the wall. She claimed to have already called the general back home. She thought of doing something to save Adam and Connie, and for that, she took out a bow and an arrow which had a strong poison on it. She was planning on converting this man for the night's dinner as she shot the arrow at him. The kids expected their mother to be good as expected, and they might not even need their father to return to deal with a piece of trash like Raoul. Whereas for Raoul, he claimed it was about time to untie the kids. He deflected the arrow back towards Brown's wife with his magic, and after the arrow hit her, she was left senseless from the poison. Raoul stated that he would now give the kids the special duty he spoke about, while they had to see their mother die in front of them. She started releasing foams from her mouth, and Raoul figured she brought it upon herself, and it kind of saved him some trouble. She died not long after that from poison, and the kids mourned over her death while crying out their necks. However, the sight of her being dead was an amusement for Raoul. Then he told those two to do their duty now before their father comes back home. Meanwhile, Brown stopped to take a breath in the forest and asked his soldiers to give some water to the horses. Suddenly, one of the soldiers shouted after seeing something strange. Brown went to check why behind it, and the soldier pointed him towards the direction of that strange light he saw. When Brown saw that bright light which was approaching closer to them, he noticed that it was actually the soul of the messenger he killed the previous day. Brown and his soldiers were all shocked, since it was not every day one gets to see a ghost. Then the soul spoke up to them to return right now. He informed Brown that Raoul and his children were waiting for him back home, leaving Brown faced with a fearful expression. Meanwhile, Raoul was sitting under the same tree enjoying the weather and the plots he put in action. He muttered to all the dead servants that they must be tired after having a fulfilling day, then reminded them intentionally that murderers like them don't deserve anything other than this. Raoul was starting to like his dark magic, since it was proving to be convenient for him. He could easily see a person's past with it, and when he used it on the corpse ahead of him, Raoul could hear all the dirty things those servants did, along with thinking of killing as the best thing to earn money from their master. Raoul figured that humans were truly dark, and he was starting to see these powerless weaklings, for whom he once risked his life to save, were just some rotten personalities delighted to sacrifice others. Raoul thought after this that he seemed to have no idea about the humans after all, and the cruel things he thought were only limited to demons were even found in humans. And as for these servants, their rotten personalities were all like that because of their master. Soon, Raoul could see the next subject of his show had finally arrived, whereas General Brown was standing there extremely raged after he witnessed Raoul kill his people. Raoul mentioned that he was here earlier than he expected, and he stood up to welcome him back home, with a body pinned on the tree behind him. Raoul stated they were waiting for him here, with his wife having nothing on her, while also having her stomach open. General Brown's rage went over the charts when he saw that, and Raoul understood this shit would be interesting. Raoul declared his doing on the tree as a masterpiece, made by none other than his own sons. He told Brown they were quite skillful in doing that, and now that even his sons were included, Brown ragefully took out his sword and called Raoul a wretch for doing all of this. He asked Raoul where he put his sons. Raoul told him to calm down and take a closer look, but Brown didn't wait for Raoul to finish his sentence and attacked him. Raoul ducked to dodge it, while Brown demanded for an answer instantly. Raoul told him it won't be any use to throw slashes at him, and Brown attacked despite that because he wanted only an answer. Raoul stated he didn't need to worry, because his sons were still alive. So, rather than talking about that, Brown should be taking a look at this scene and tell Raoul if this scene reminds Brown of anything, such as the death of another woman with her child standing and looking at her dead mother. Raoul asked a little bit more precisely if he remembered Raoul's hometown, the Baden village. Many years ago in Baden village, when Raoul used to be a kid, he liked finding mushrooms and showing them to his elder sister. She would also join to play with him, and later on both of them take those mushrooms back home, where their mother cooked them for dinner and told both of them to carefully wash their hands before eating. Their village was a small settlement located in the western end of the country. Raoul was born and raised in this village, and lived peacefully with his mother and older sister in a family of 3. He and his sister were playing even on that day when things changed for them, as they were trying to catch a rabbit. Raoul managed to catch the rabbit, however he ended up seeing Uncle Hans from their village, injured all over his body. Hans said that he had been looking for them to inform them that their village was attacked, and by the time they returned, they saw that everything in the village was burned. Raoul shouted and went to find his mother despite the fire, and then his sister told him to look behind on the tree. The sight on this tree was burned into his eyes because there was his mother's dead body pinned on the tree. At that time, General Brown arrived there and asked them if there were any survivors, saying that he heard this village was attacked by demons. Brown looked in the direction these kids were watching, and there he saw the dead body of the woman who must have been the mother of these two. That was when Raoul started glowing with a light, and to General Brown's surprise, because he knew what this light meant, General Brown went to approach the kid, and Raoul learned that time that it was his resentment which had awoken the heroic powers bestowed upon him. General Brown said sorry to Raoul for not being able to make it in time for the demon's attack. However, he asked Raoul why don't he come with him to the castle in order to defeat those abominable demons. Raoul accepted the hand offered to him that day, and thus entered the capital with General to take the training as a hero. But at that time, he hadn't realized that everything on that day was a path deliberately prepared by those bastards. It turned out later on that everything that was told to him, from demons setting things ablaze to ravaging villages and people's lives, was all the things that made the foolish believe him. Raoul mimicked himself that earlier. He didn't want anyone to experience such painful thoughts ever again, and he needed to exterminate all demons for the sake of mankind. General Brown exclaimed if all of this he was doing was just revenge for that time. And if that was the case, Brown laughed and agreed that he was the one who burned Raoul's hometown by the orders from the king. However, he couldn't forgive not being able to kill him, because Brown didn't see exactly what part of Raoul was like a hero, since Brown believed that he was the strongest in this kingdom. After that, General Brown didn't hesitate to mention that he should tell Raoul about how his mother tasted. Brown stated that his mother was delightful, as she covered for a village kid who was on the verge of death and pleased for his life. She wanted to let that child live, even if it meant sacrificing her own life away. Brown then took that rare opportunity to cook up Raoul's mother right in front of that kid, and she was irresistibly good. He exclaimed with a dirty face that her meat was tender and prime for a country girl. But to his surprise, Raoul just stated so what. Brown was left shocked to see Raoul's expression was unexpectedly calm, then revealed that he already knew all about it, and that was also why he was able to reproduce it like the current scene behind him. Not only that, but also claiming to be strongest was just a fantasy he had been living. Brown charged towards Raoul from anger, while exclaiming that only if Raoul didn't have the title of the hero, he would just be a speedy youngster who was no match for him. General declared a challenge to Raoul, and Raoul understood that the thoughts like strong or strongest were what were driving this man. So, if that was the case, Raoul proudly accepted the General's little challenge and declared let's rock it at once, as he got ready to break all those thoughts of General Brown apart. Now as their battle was about to begin, Raoul told General Brown that his sons were chained up in his estate, and Brown would only be able to save them if he could defeat him. Brown admitted it won't take that long for him and his sons to be feasting on Raoul's flesh. He dashed right towards Raoul to land a hit on him with his sword, but Raoul just dodged it, while Brown's attack released a huge explosion on the ground. Raoul was damned to see that all the pile of bodies of the Brown servants was gone just like that with that explosion, while Brown was more inclined to repeat those heavy slashes. Then Raoul sat down on his sword to mock his attacks, and felt that there was no way in hell that he would be able to land such puny attacks on him. Brown was shocked to see Raoul's incredible agility, after which Raoul made a sword from his magic and stated it was his turn now. Raoul held his sword tight with a smirk on his face, and then he got back from General Brown. Raoul was playing around with the general, and then launched a slow slash. General Brown said it was a weak stroke and laughed it off, until he actually had to defend it with all the strength he got. Brown didn't expect that the raw strength difference between him and Raoul would be this much, while Raoul kept making fun of the general by saying that he was surely seeming to be giving it his best. Brown was enraged even more by that mockery, so he shouted and imbued his sword with fire magic. Raoul didn't expect Brown would become this desperate so soon, and laugh like that selfish fat boy everyone hated in his childhood. But to his surprise, Raoul was not reacting to it even if he was covered with fire. Brown was left speechless as he saw Raoul just casually walking even with fire all around him. Raoul stated this was exactly the fire which burned his hometown, and so he charged Brown with a level increase in his swordsmanship. Brown was having trouble keeping up with his attacks, and Raoul teased him by saying that it looked like he could do it if he tried. Their clash was clearly one-sided, but Raoul held back to exert only a little stronger attack, as they both got pushed back. Brown started to breathe heavily, and Raoul laughed at how quickly the general was out of breath with just that. Brown felt the tension, but he still didn't want to let Raoul look down upon him. He attacked Raoul with all the energy Brown was left with, but Raoul just calmly hit Brown with his sword and sent him flying straight to the tree, right under his wife's corpse. Raoul exclaimed about where the person who boasted about his strength disappeared off to, while General Brown was not wanting to admit defeat to a mere brat, even if he had to crawl his way back to his sword. Raoul figured that Brown was surely a stubborn one, so he went to Brown's sword and muttered Brown's defeat from up close to his ears. Brown was still on and on about being the strongest, and seeing that they were not getting anywhere this way, Raoul just sat down beside Brown's sword and said he would wait until Brown reached his sword. Brown crawled his way closer to his sword, while Raoul was cheering for him. But when he was just about to reach it, Raoul stood up and kicked the hell out of Brown in his stomach, making him cough up a lot of blood. Brown was sent a few meters back again. Then Raoul asked him to give it another try. Brown kept trying to reach his sword repeatedly, but every time he would instead get kicked wherever on his body each time. He didn't give up, no matter how much blood he coughed up, and Raoul was getting bored at this point after kicking him again. This time, Brown let out loudest screams than any others, which made Raoul understand that he played around a bit too much. He declared that it was about time for the dinner. Then he heard Brown yelling out why couldn't he beat Raoul even though he was the strongest. Raoul laughed at his joke, and then he began a magic spell while telling Brown that the answer was simple, that Brown wasn't the strongest, as he crushed Brown's sword apart into pieces which he was trying to reach from dozens of attempts. He told General clearly that he lost to the same brat, and the expression on Brown's face was so amusing to Raoul. Raoul sat down as he said that now that the general doesn't have a sword, he might not have any need for these hands anymore. So, Raoul used his magic on Brown's hands to pull them so tight that they would come off. Brown squealed with extreme pain, but the only thing Raoul said next was that he had prepared a special dinner for them already. So, leaving Brown's hand behind, he took him back to the estate for the feast. By the time General Brown got conscious, he saw his pulled hands, and that he was sitting on the dining table, with his sons on the seats and right. Raoul greeted the general on his wake up, and he didn't expect someone like Brown to pass out from pain. Brown tried calling out his kids Adam and Connie, but for some reason they seemed to be empty-minded or brainwashed. Brown shouted at Raoul just what the hell happened to his sons, to which Raoul replied that he just copied Brown's family, and used the drug which he found out in the cellar when he was planning to tie up his sons. But after walking for a bit there, Brown wondered where he should put those children, and that was when he heard murmurs of some people in the cells. Raoul figured that they didn't look conscious, and he asked kids to confirm that this was Brown's wife doing. He was a bit annoyed by the useless kids, and decided to just throw them in randomly. That was when his leg stumbled on a bottle of drug, seeing which Raoul was feeling like he found just what he needed. After that, he drugged his children, and thought that Brown's wife was surely outrageous to develop a drug like this, and recalled that her family was indeed prestigious for producing many healers known throughout the country. Raoul was planning to pay a visit to their family next, so he asked Brown if he had any message for them. Brown exclaimed at Raoul to go screw himself, to which Raoul replied that he would pass on the same message to them then. Now the iron plate was hot and ready to be cooked, so next Raoul started the carnival feast by ringing a bell. He announced that the ingredients for today were 2 lambs and a bull. Hearing this, Brown was left fearing because he didn't like meats like that, and Raoul stated he wanted them to enjoy the freshest meat, so he decided to cut the meat himself right in front of them. Brown told him to stop, but ignoring that, Raoul proceeded with the knife and firstly cut the first lamb, which was Brown's son Connie's shoulder. Raoul cut the shoulder parts of Connie, and stated it was looking real creamy after putting some oil, and then he sprinkled some salt and pepper on it as well. Brown shouted out loud for Raoul to just stop doing this, as Raoul cooked up the meat and then served Brown his own son's meat. And since Brown lost his hands, Raoul used his magic to control Brown's mouth and feed the meat with his own hands. Brown was forced to chew that meat, which made him feel a lot of disgust, and forced screams inside. Raoul asked him if it was scrumptious, but General Brown couldn't even spit or puke due to the forced mouth from magic. Raoul stated it won't be good to waste his favorite dish by spilling it, so he used magic and made Brown swallow down the bloody damn meat. General Brown yelled at Hero for coming and destroying everything in his life, but Raoul reminded him that he was just doing what he did to him. After that, he moved on to the next parts, from thigh, ribs, tripe, and lastly, the tongue. Raoul made Brown clean up all the plates, and a full course of sheep was done for Brown, except that he meant his son Connie by sheep. Raoul said it was now time for the next son, and thought that he should feed him the bull's meat. Brown knew that by bull, Raoul meant him, and then Raoul asked Brown about which part of him would he want to make his son eat first. For starters, Raoul chose the shoulders, and so he got onto his work right away, which produced some painful screams for some reason. Raoul got the excellent meat he wanted and prepared it deliciously for Adam to eat. Adam laughed while eating that meat, and Raoul asked the general to see the perfect example of a father, like a son, who was eating the meat with absolute bliss. Brown begged Raoul to do whatever he wanted with younger son Connie, but leave his eldest son and the heir Adam out of this. General Brown had nothing to try now except begging continuously for himself and Adam to be forgiven and allowed to leave. Raoul reminded General Brown that was how his mother pleaded for her son's life also. After which, he asked Brown to remember what happened to his mother's body, because now he was going to suffer the same fate. As the knife approached Brown, he let out cries of help to be saved, but in the end of the day, the moon rose up, with Raoul just relaxing back while Brown's dead body was lying there in front of him with various parts missing. Raoul muttered to himself that the bodies don't give off any feelings, and the only ones who swallow their rage were the ones who get revenge while they were alive. So with that being said, Raoul got up after clearing the killer castle, and he also managed to recover his handy souvenir for the next stage, and play with his next prey. The place for the next stage was the Altman Resort National Pharmaceutical Research Institute, where in the past, people were brought to be the experiments of the researcher Bennick, wondering how much of the body can a human afford to lose before dying. She didn't have any mercy for her subjects, and did whatever she wanted with their body, even if it was something on a whim. Sometimes, she would even add their body parts to the collection, and then wonder shitty things like what would happen if she replaced a human's brain with a monkey's. Her subjects would cry for their life or for their mother, as Bennick didn't care about their ages. She suited herself even with the tools, and then carcassed their bodies like a treasure chest. Afterwards, a guy named Lucas, the military commander supervisor, approached her room, and once he entered the room, he stated he was here to retrieve the waste as usual. She figured that Lucas was rather early at that time, while he just looked at the quantity of waste, which was larger in numbers now. Once he looked inside the waste, Lucas could see these were the remains of humans, which Bennick had experimented on before. But Bennick didn't care how dirty the task given to him was, as long as he would get paid extra for this. He smiled, and asked Bennick when would the payment be given to him, to which she replied it would definitely be given the same day. Lucas was fine as long as she wore it out, while Bennick knew Lucas was the kind of guy who only had one thing: money in his head. He was a cunning man who would carry out the facility's task obediently, while there was one other person who wanted Bennick to make immortal soldiers. The name of the guy was Lord Dha Costa, and he wished Bennick to make subjects who won't perish quickly from a painful fight against a monster. He asked Bennick if she could do anything like that, to which she mentioned that it would be more troublesome to deal with immortal soldiers, because no matter how immortal their bodies were, once their bodies decay, they would be even worse than rubbish. She asked if the idea of making them in a way that they would destroy themselves after a set period of time. She claimed that they could raise the specimen's strength and have them annihilate the enemy, while also setting them up so it could be cured as well. Supervisor Costa liked that idea, so he sent his son Johannes to commence development already. After that, Johannes went on to the church and asked if the injured soldiers were here. Once the sisters there agreed they were, she asked his purpose to come here. Costa replied that he would bring them to the laboratory, and at the same time, he announced to everyone that Dr. Bennick had developed a cure, which was a drug that would cure any injury of theirs no matter what. He told them all to follow after him, and the hopeful soldiers agreed to go along with him. But all of that was just a facade, since the soldiers were put in the experiment area, while Bennick, Costa and Johannes looked at the effect of drugs on those people from above. Bennick stated that this drug might take some time to be perfect, so she asked Costa to prepare more guinea pigs for them. Then the soldiers would be told that if they assisted with the experiments, they would get to live in a noble's house, for which all they needed was to drink this drug. The hopeful people would smile amongst each other, thinking that they would finally be able to eat however they like. But they soon got to face the reality when Bennick began the experiments, and those soldiers would turn into things which didn't look like humans at all. Those guys became extremely thirsty once they changed into that form because of drugs, but Bennick wanted them to stay in that form for longer instead. Then more people, but this time poor people, would be given hope that they won't have to pay back their borrowed money to Costa, and Costa asked them in return they would have to help them with the experiments. The people would agree with smiles, without knowing what was behind that face of Costa, which knew fully well that they wouldn't be coming back alive. Once those guys would turn into their subjects as well, Bennick would note the results, and this time, in the results, the strength and the duration were satisfactory for her. She figured that this was finally the wanted result of her long-running experiment and the birth of the berserker. Costa told her that she did well, and now they need to administer those good-for-nothing soldiers. And by that, they meant some soldiers who have joined recently as the supply soldiers. They got their first job to transport goods to Knot Village, and they wished to be helpful to Raoul one day because they admired Raoul from the day he rescued all of them. Then those soldiers would be told by Johannes that when they reached the checkpoint, they could now put down their goods. He told them that the forest ahead of them would be filled with monsters, so to protect themselves, they should all take the drug he had brought. Now back in the present time, when the same laboratory was still there with the thunderstorm and rain pouring down, Raoul was finally here and declared it was about time to begin a fun and exciting game, along with the general beside him. Meanwhile, inside the Pharmaceutical Research Institute, everyone hurriedly went to the meeting room, where Costa seemed to be extremely scared for his life. He didn't think that his daughter's family would be killed, along with General Brown, who blatantly showed off his strength before. Not only that, but even Her Majesty to be attacked was something that could speak for itself, and the danger he might be in right now. He held a meeting with the other three, and Johannes informed his father that they should bribe the military commander and have him send them more soldiers. Johannes refused to be killed like his little sister, to which Bennick said there was nothing to fear as long as they had her self-made poison, and even the hero couldn't survive it. Johannes asked just how would make the hero Raoul take the poison, and she said he should use his head for once. Johannes exclaimed what she meant by that. Then Costa to them it was not the time to be fighting amongst each other. Then Lucas told everyone to settle down, as they should be thinking this over calmly. Costa got Lucas as the only one man who was sent here to guard them. Then his son informed him that Lucas was said to be so skilled that having him was better than 200 soldiers. Lucas then took out a warning letter he got from the royal capital, which made their situation sound more realistic. Everyone could feel the pressure and the danger they were in, because of the so-called revenge of the hero. Lucas asked them if they were aware of this, to which Bennick refused from confessing anything, but Johannes shouted they were doomed if Hero wanted revenge for that thing. Bennick shouted at him to stop, while Lucas asked what that was, but they were not willing to reply, which got him more curious about the circumstances. Johannes spoke up to tell him the truth, but Bennick stated that there was no justifiable reason behind the hero's actions, and he had just gone crazy. Costa exclaimed at her to quiet down because they would be doomed if Hero were to hear such words, while Lucas stated that she was right and Hero was after all a great fool who was stupid and ignorant to the ways of the world. He muttered that Hero was surely not worth fearing, even if he became a murderer crazed for revenge. After that, he asked them exactly what they did to cause Hero's rage, and if they don't speak frankly then he won't be able to protect them. Costa stated that it might have to do something with the drugs they prescribed the soldiers during the war, but he couldn't speak further because that matter was top secret. Lucas told him to settle down and spill it out while he had him here. Costa asked Lucas if he meant those words, to which he agreed at once, while mentioning that the General Brown was just strong at brute strength, so not him. But Lucas himself was the only one who could compete with the hero on equal footing. Costa figured that he could count on Lucas then, and Lucas agreed they could leave this to him. Costa told him that he would pay anything to survive this. Suddenly, in the rainstorm, a thunder broke down with a loud voice and a dead body appeared on the window. Everyone was shocked when they took a proper look at the face of this undead, and realized while being afraid that it belonged to the General Brown. Costa wondered just what the hell was happening, and after that, the undead of Brown started creating loud noises to declare the hunt. Bennick asked Lucas to drive that undead away. Then Lucas told them to calm down and see that the undead was trying to say something. The undead of Brown told everyone that they were all now locked inside the research facility, and none of the 231 humans inside the facility would be able to leave now. Only those who managed to survive until midnight would be allowed to leave, and with that, the game of hide and seek began. It warned that the game would begin in 10 minutes, so they had only this time to run and hide, or fight as much as they could. The message left Johannes scared for his life and clinging on to Costa, after which, the undead disappeared. Bennick was relieved as she stated that the hero was only controlling a corpse with magic, so it was safe for now. Then Lucas told them that their enemy wanted them to be in disorder, and if they realized that, they must hurry up to tell him just what they did to incur Hero's wrath. He declared that Hero had always adhered to a rule of an eye for an eye, so it was the same this time as well. He asked if that was connected to what Costa said earlier about prescribing drugs to the soldiers, who were actually the hero's beloved men. Costa told him that those soldiers were just his supply soldier comrades, and they just died as a side effect. But it wasn't a big deal because they were all worthless pawns for them. He asked Lucas that he might think the same, And besides that, they managed to eradicate all of the monsters in the forest because of drugs. Bannock claimed that if it wasn't for her drug, then those small soldiers would have simply died in vain, so they should be thankful for that. Then Lucas asked them if that drug was under protection in this research institute, and this question reminded everyone that they must protect it no matter what. Johannes shouted as he cowered in fear that if that drug was to be stolen, then this whole research institute would turn into a haunted house. Johannes wondered what it meant, then he asked them to show him where the drug was stored immediately. Bannock started to show him the directions, and on the way he asked again what they meant by haunted, when it was just a strength-enhancing drug. Johannes stuttered from replying. Then Costa stated that they couldn't tell something like that top secret to Lucas. Lucas sighed as these guys were unaware of how much danger they were in right now. After that, they took him to the storeroom number 1. And once they entered that room, Bannock quickly opened the locker where the drug was stored. Lucas entered inside it quickly, and to their surprise, all of the drugs from the shelves disappeared, with a note left behind by the hero Raoul saying first come, first serve. Costa exclaimed to be made fool by the hero, and Bannock told them it was too dangerous for them to stay here. So, she quickly tried to escape through the window but got bounced back inside from the invisible barrier casted on this building. She could tell this was dark magic, and it meant that they wouldn't be able to escape anymore. And, if there was no means to escape, the hero Raoul would soon be stomping over this charade, followed by his undead Brown playing a trumpet. Raoul entered the facility with General Brown's dead, and he was having fun with an entry like this, while making Brown carry all the vials for him. Now, the time for the game began and encountered 2 researchers at this place. They started running right after they saw him, and they muttered that they should leave quickly, leaving those seniors behind who were in the conference room. Raoul was delighted to get some free information, but he wanted more of that, so he declared the beginning of his game right here from the first floor. He told researchers they shall play together as he sent the general to go and attack them. The research assistants were all scared from an undead charging at them, and when Brown held one of them, Raoul told him to keep them alive and pile them up in a corner. Brown did as they said, and he used his undead hands to put them the way Raoul wanted. The assistants cried out that they would do anything to live, and Raoul figured it was perfect, because he also had something he would like to get some help with. The assistants stated they would do anything he said, then Raoul told them that he had a drug with him, which he wanted them to drink. The researcher was hesitant because he knew it must be something dangerous, but Raoul simply held his face and fed him the drug himself, while telling him to do his best as the drug went and touched the guy's tongue. The assistant started screaming and gurgling in pain. Then his body started to change its shape into that of the likes of a monster. Other assistants were scared to witness this scene, whereas Raoul got his answer on what happened from this drug. The assistant was now just a monster, and he started to squeal that his throat hurts like hell from being dry. Raoul stated to others that it was surely fun to turn them into water-thirsty berserkers, and they would rampage with an absurd strength. Others started running after seeing a berserker, but they were stopped by Brown, as he warned them that they couldn't escape. Raoul was having fun to see that this place was surely big enough to have more monsters, while that one berserker from before held another researcher in hand and started crushing him tightly. Then Raoul used his magic to cut off the arm of that berserker to save that guy from dying like that. He asked them if they were okay, after which Raoul informed the berserker not to kill anyone, because Raoul wanted to turn all of them into berserkers as well. So, Raoul repeated the same process with the other one as well, and after some time, he started to feel like he should have dressed up as a nurse after giving so many drops. He filled the entire floor with berserkers, which used to be the 121 people present on this floor. After that, those berserkers were on the brink of getting out of control, and some of them charged at Raoul. Raoul moved from there and told his undead pawn Brown to watch out, but Brown was unable to dodge in time and he ended up being crushed by the force of Berserker's attack. The Berserkers went wild and attacked blindly for water, and they all ended up creating a nasty scene for Raoul. Raoul just lost the one assistant he got, to which he was not attached to at all, since it was his prey that once used to be one of the 5 strongest in the country. However, he was glad to witness the effects of that drug, and started assessing how they were seriously weaponized. The Berserkers kept shouting for water, and Raoul said he would now take care of all of them so they were free to come at him at once. The Berserkers started charging towards Raoul, and he just did the same, while dodging the incoming attacks. He figured they were surely fast, but no match for him. He didn't like how these bad-mannered berserks were acting up, so Raoul started kicking their heads and killing a dozen of them at once. Then he got an idea for the other berserkers, so Raoul just stopped them with his magic and started pressing them all together while stating that he would play with them until the end, as he skilled dozens more. After that, he got down from the one he was standing on, and when he asked for water, Raoul just thanked him by killing him as well. He took out his stopwatch and saw there were 5 more minutes. He figured that all these researchers in their true forms, because even when they were human-shaped, Raoul had looked into their wrongdoings when he was doing a preliminary inspection. At that time, he witnessed it himself just how rotten these people were inside to take advantage of those soldiers, and thought of them as just sacrificial pawns. Raoul learned beforehand that there were 231 researchers in this research institute, and all of them were scumbags who kept repeating similar words and same mistakes. Not a single one of them had a decent soul, and Raoul figured at the end of the day what mattered was that these people were given karma directly through him. Now he figured it was about time, and suddenly, all the berserkers started screaming and they started killing themselves. Raoul wanted to see them in more pain, as he knew that this drug was designed that way, that after 15 minutes of intake, the berserkers would self-destruct themselves. He laughed at seeing all of them die so miserably, while he stood over them with more boxes filled with vials of drugs. He knew they deserved it, because once upon a time, those supply soldiers who were close to Raoul also suffered the same fate, while Raoul was fighting in the front lines unaware of the real enemies which weren't at front line but within. Raoul learned how they were transformed into berserkers and died in vain. He could still remember the hopeful words of those lively soldiers, as he exclaimed to these researchers that the only reason they could do their thing was because of the soldiers fighting on the battlefields. And now, this situation was what they brought upon themselves. After that, all he had left now was 110 people on the second floor as well, and then head on to the medical exam on the top floor. After that, he went off to the second floor and turned some doors into locked cells, for setting up the stage for his next show. Now going a few minutes later on the top floor of the Research Institute. At the time when rain was pouring down heavily, Costa, Johannes, Bennick and Lucas were having the discussions for having the military commander to send them soldiers. When Bennick was suggesting poisons, Johannes questioned her, and then those two leading to an argument with Costa having to quiet them down. At that time, Raoul just wanted to laugh his ass off. Then Lucas suggested they calm down and think this over, along with the warning letter they got from the royal capital. Raoul was present in that room at the time, and he was doing his best to remain calm and not laugh out loud. As the time passed, they had been waiting for him endlessly for 2 hours now without even noticing that they were locked in. He wondered how his illusion magic would work, or what colors would be on their faces. Now with that said, that was the time when Raoul used his magic to create a thunder and brought upon the illusion of Brown's undead, which made everyone in the room shocked and scared for their life. He was enchanted by these fantastic reactions, and this general was not even the real one, because he was already broken on the first floor by berserkers. Right now, he also had a mask on his face, which was made from the pieces of General Brown's flesh also. That means Raoul was currently an imposter among them in disguise. He was feeling great from reenactment, and from that point, he enjoyed seeing what they all were going to do. After that, he faked everything from getting to check the drug, which was already stolen hours ago, with the message he left behind. And he had already used it to destroy everyone in the lower floors, so currently there were 4 left, among which Raoul was one of them. By the time Bennick noticed the barrier of dark magic, Raoul wished this hide and seek to be fun. After that, they were all desperate to go and hide somewhere to save their lives, and it was just a matter of who would get found first. Costa said that their hope was just to escape until midnight, and they would be let off the hook. Lucas asked him if he really believed that, and even if they did, there were still 6 hours to go. Johannes shouted that hiding was still the safest option. Then Bennick spoke up they should move to a room where Hero won't be able to find that. Lucas asked if they really had a room like that, to which she agreed, and hearing it made Costa and Johannes desperate to hurriedly go to that room. However, it seemed that Bennick seemed to have caught on to something. Then Lucas asked if they should have some coffee. Johannes yelled it wasn't time for that, while Bennick agreed and offered to brew the tea. She went to the shelves to make the coffee, and felt glad that the other two were idiots, because, now thanks to them, she had a chance to escape. Bennick prepared coffee and served it to Costa, Johannes, and Lucas. After Costa and Johannes drank the tea, they felt like they settled down a bit, and then Lucas set out to wait a moment. He asked Bennick if they should exchange the cups, which led her to ask why behind it. Lucas stated that there was a chance that she might have added something inside it. because it made him curious that she of all of them would be the one to take initiative to brew it, especially in this situation, inside of a research institute which makes drugs that change people into monsters. Hearing Johans and Costa spilled their tea, Lucas considered that she was trying to turn them into monsters to fight the hero. Bennick stated that he should have stopped her sooner in that case, and claimed that she didn't put any drug into either of her or Lucas' cups. Johans and Costa exclaimed that it must be their cups in that case, while Raul, who was present in this room, was feeling so good to see his plan was going perfect, while Lucas shouted at Bennick to explain the meaning of that. Bennick replied that he should be the one who needs to cease his obvious act. Johans and Costa were shocked to hear that, as she explained that this entire time they have been fooled. She already noticed in their conversation in the conference room, and asked Lucas where he got that letter saying an eye for an eye. She stated that such a thing wouldn't be written on the letter from the royal capital, and Lucas seemed to understand the hero's feelings quite well. She pointed at Lucas that he was surely trying to keep his act so hard, or she should say, the hero Raul. Lucas stayed silent at that moment, which proved that Bennick was right about it. She claimed that the intelligent one was always the true victor, while Lucas smirked and started clapping for her. He burst into laughter as he congratulated Bennick for noticing the hint he threw before, which might just have been too simple according to him. She asked him why he was acting like he had the upper hand, since she believed he had won this game of hide and seek, so now he would die here by the hands of monsters, which Johans and Costa were going to turn into. Both of them were scared, as she told those guys that they would be turning into berserkers in 1 minute, and this time it was supposedly 100 times more powerful than before. She laughed as she asked Raul how he was feeling to be the loser. Raul said if that was all, putting her laugh to a stop. She could not deduce what hero meant by that, whereas Raul replied if that was all she had thought of, she shouldn't be acting like a sore loser just yet. Bennick was confused to think what the hero was talking about, and then she just called him foolish as it was too late for everyone else according to her. She ordered Johans and Costa go ahead and attack Raul, while calling them her berserkers. The time was up for them to be changing now, but to her shock, those two didn't change into berserkers at all. Bennick immediately started recalling how this drug of hers always managed to give some results, but this time it just failed her like that. Raul told her it was too bad, that no matter how many hours pass, nothing will change, because that drug of hers was something that only worked on living human beings. So, when she was acting all like a winner all that time, to him, Bennick was looking nothing except a sore loser herself who was too happy to be able to just solve a simple puzzle. He deactivated his illusion magic, and announced to Bennick that in this game of hide and seek, she had lost the game big time. She understood his words with a shocking reality when she saw that Johans and Costa were already dead, and Raul had been simply using his illusion magic to make them seem alive. Raul revealed that by the time everyone arrived at the conference, they were already corpses, and despite how time-consuming and disgusting it was, he was satisfied as long as he had fun. Bennick fell on her knees feeling weak after realizing just what was going on all this time. And it turned out that all this time, when she thought that only one enemy was hidden among 4, she was actually the only one all along among enemies. Raul laughed as he recalled how she barked at those corpses to attack him, despite not even seeing if they turned into monsters or not. He asked her how it feels to be the loser, while Bennick was crying after suffering this defeat like this. Then Raul told her that her secret drug weapon was wasted, but there was nothing to cry about, because he had set a stage for you to be able to perform her beloved experiments as much as she wanted. He held her chin, as he stated it was time to have some fun together. After that, he took her to a place where she couldn't see anything. He whispered that it was because he had prepared a surprise for her. She asked Raul to let her go, and he said this was happening only because she was struggling and more so, deserved it. He asked her just how many people have she killed to get enough guinea pigs for her drug, and to satiate her curiosity. Bennick exclaimed he got it all wrong. None of it was her own intention and she was just following orders. Raul told her that was exactly what Lord Dha Costa said before he died, and he tried to pin all the blame on Bennick. Bennick called them liars, and her story was right. But Raul was in no mood to listen, so he said they should move on from blaming the dead, and so he pushed her towards a place filled with something like a liquid. Bennick thought it was water while being blindfolded. Next, he removed the blindfold to let her see that she was actually thrown into the pile of bodies of her failed experiments. He reminded her this was all she was doing, and Bennick was scared hell out of her own consciousness. Raul told her there was no need to fear her own arts, and then Raul reminded her that she was next to go towards the underground laboratory with the door at the end of the hall. He figured it would be fun to see the rare scene of a doctor swimming her way there in the sea of these bodies. Bennick started crawling her way into the sea of blood, where more of her experiments await. After that, Bennick somehow managed to reach the underground laboratory, where it wouldn't matter much even if humans were turned into weapons. Raoul asked her if this much was enough to scare her, even though she killed dozens of people in this laboratory alone. He reminded Bennick about her crimes, from slicing feet of girls and also transplanting monkey brains into children. She treated many humans as experimental animals and now claimed that they were all false accusations. Raoul told her that saying such a thing at this point won't mean anything. Then Bennick asked him what proof he had about those things. Raoul made it clear that there was no need for such a thing, as he held her head in his palm. After which, he made Bennick feel all kinds of pain that she made those poor people suffer. Raoul asked her if this much was enough, or should he remind her of more events like that. She screamed out in pain to just stop doing that, and admitted that she did all those things. But even after that, she was fixated on the same thing that she didn't do on her own will. Raoul figured this was not going to be an easy one. Then Bennick came down and begged Raoul while stating that she had no choice but to obey orders, even if it meant her leading those soldiers to their graves. She agreed that was true, but it was actually the neighboring villagers who turned those soldiers away, instead of just giving them some water. Then Raoul spoke up that he already knows that, and he heard that after Dr. Bennick's drug turned them into monsters, there was a chance to be saved if they drank water in those 15 minutes. So those soldiers went to the neighboring village to desperately ask for some water. They killed all the monsters in the forest near the village, and the village should have already been safe. But the chief of that village shouted at those soldiers to turn the berserkers away as they don't have any water for outsiders. Now Bennick reasoned that he should be taking his revenge on that village instead of her, to which he agreed that she was right, and it caused a little relief to Bennick. But she was unaware of the fact that Raoul wanted to give her just this light of hope, dwelling in those eyes of despair. At that time, she found mercy in his words and gave off an expression of putting all her hopes on that last thread of chance. And that thread was exactly what Raoul wanted to sever, as he told her that revenge on those villagers was irresistible, which was why he would be taking his revenge properly on those villagers too. Bennick exclaimed what he meant too, then he just came straight to the main event, which was the beloved experiment she had been long waiting for. And with that, Raoul began the ultimate human experiment with his subject, Bennick. Raoul chose 2 berserkers to be the doctors in charge, and dressed himself up as the researcher. He announced that this would be the starting of a never-ending experiment, which Bennick wanted to stay out of no matter what. But those berserkers kept her in place until they tied her down to the experiment's subject chairs. Raoul stated that how long she would live would depend on her, so he wished her good luck and began to showcase all the drugs she made until now. He asked Bennick if she could confirm that these all were poison behind them. He told her that this experiment would be centered around her own poisons, and so he took one and made her drink it down to every last drop. He told her good job for swallowing down to every last drop. Then he asked her how it tasted. She started screaming that her throat was hurting real bad, like it was on fire. Raoul then asked her what kind of effect this poison had. Suddenly, Bennick felt herself on the edge, and Raoul noticed that her legs were sweating crazy. And soon her body was so hot that it started to burn the clothes. Raoul was amused by this sight, and he informed her that her body was currently reeking. She requested Raoul to let her go to the washroom, as she was starting to feel the tension in her whole body, including the stomach. Raoul was enjoying seeing her shivering with pain, and soon Bennick couldn't hold herself anymore and she released her waists. Raoul called her a dirty scum who was stinking right from her body and even let out some disgusting farts. Bennick requested a lot from Raoul to save her, as her stomach was hurting so much that she was on the brink of death. Bennick kept shouting out in pain for help, and eventually she even started vomiting. Bennick begged him again and again with her drooling face. Raoul figured that he had no choice, so he decided to strengthen just her organs, but only for a while. He stated that the pain and suffering would stay intact, and if she wanted to drink an antidote he would let her drink one. But however, it was not that simple, because she would need to make it herself. He told her that it should be a piece of cake for her, even if she was vomiting blood, shaking hands, and blurry eyes. Raoul asked her to show today what a genius doctor could do. Bennick squealed that was impossible with her in a state like this, but Raoul just went and said she was running her hands, not mouth. She quickly understood that only she could save herself, so the moment Raoul released her binds, she exclaimed to not die here in a place like this. Bennick quickly got to work on her table, and Raoul was enjoying the show of her desperate attempts at antidote, while she was trying to keep herself together and work even if she was vomiting often. Raoul stated it would be too bad now that she would have to do it again. She gritted her teeth, declaring that she would never die, and after some more attempts, Bennick finally managed to make an antidote. She drank it down right away because there was no time to test it out, and surprisingly she got better with it. She claimed it was her victory now. Then Raoul came up to her while clapping on her marvelous work. Bennick told him that nobody could beat her in intellect, but shockingly, Raoul just declared that they would now move on to the second experiment. Bennick didn't know there would be a second one, and Raoul took the liberty of reminding her that this was the beginning of a never-ending experiment, as he had no intentions of letting her escape with her life. Bennick yelled at Raoul that he said before that he would let her live long if she survived it, to which he replied there was no lie, since she did manage to live longer by a bit, with her own ability. So, now talks aside, he began the second experiment, and this time, he took out a notebook and a pen to log down each and every result of the experiment, while she would have fun running tests on herself. Bennick has said sorry for like dozens of times, and even begged for forgiveness while stating she would do anything to live. But unfortunately for her, he won't forgive her because the ones she needed to apologize were not here to listen to her begging. After that, he repeated the tests on Bennick for a second time, a 13th time, and every time she would have to make antidotes for her poisons by herself as well. Eventually, she reached the point by 20 the first time, where her whole body began to rot and her skin was extremely itchy, so much that she kept scratching it, whereas Raoul was having fun to see there were all sorts of drugs kept here. But she was in no state to listen, and Bennick quickly split her clothes and went into undies just to get some air. But her itching was showing no signs of stopping even if she scratched her skin enough to bleed. At the same time, Raoul cold-heartedly told her to get started with making antidote again. After 41st experiments, she declared that she couldn't take it anymore, but Raoul said she must continue and have a drink down for each death. He pulled her up and said to do her best, but he was amused to see her disgusting face just after 41st attempts, so he left her be for a moment, in which Bennick vomited again. She whispered to be wanting to live, and then Raoul stated if that was the case, then she must hurry up and make an antidote. He told her to do her best, but Bennick could no longer get up or even move her body. Raoul was worried about her state, as he said it was too bad now that she would still have to continue drinking the 42nd drink. His ruthlessness could no longer be known as the doing of a hero when he made her swallow the drug again, and she ended up not being able to react anymore. He released her on the ground since Bennick passed away miserably from all those experiments to death. Her face didn't take any time to go rot, whereas Raoul just came up close and checked her nerve with a stopwatch in his hand. Once he checked it, he wrote that after 17 hours and 31 minutes of continuously experimenting, Dr. Bennick died. And with this note, his experiment was over now, along with the revenge story about the crazed doctor. Raoul then released his illusion magic and left the lab coat behind in that laboratory. After that, he noticed that the rain stopped before he even noticed. Raoul yawned a little from exhaustion of those non-stop hours, and he enjoyed the sweet night aroma left after the rain. But even so, he figured it was no time to rest, because he had to set up the next stage and left towards the next destination, a normal-looking village. People like demons from inside who have sinned as well, which means there won't be any mercy for them. Meanwhile, some time before, in an area surrounded by forest, two girls were looking for a shelter for the night. There was a village nearby, where some kids were playing games with each other until their mother told them to take rest now. The two children had some shady faces, and they asked where their father was today, to which she replied he was on night watch today, and at the same time, those two traveling girls arrived at the gate of the village. The guy on watch noticed the sounds and went to ask if anyone was there. The two girls informed the watcher that they were lost in the forest, and hoped if he could show them the way. The guy made a worried face after hearing they were lost. Then he allowed them to come in and said their village was close to the national border, so it was normal to have all sorts of people over to their village. The guy told the kids to take it easy, and just like that, he took the girls back to his home, where his wife and the kids were there to welcome him. The girls were glad they got somewhere to stay the night. And later on over the dinner, the guy asked them what two children were doing this deep in the forest. The elder girl replied they were on their way to sell their stock in place of their sick father and got lost on the way. The guy called them amazing, as he could guess how hard it must have been for just two kids. His wife assured the kids they could rest easy. Then the elder girl said her little sister was a bit afraid of strangers, but she still came along because she was worried about her. The wife called her kind to be helping out her older sister. The kids gave a little reassurance to the girls that there won't be monsters coming to attack them anymore. And the girl also heard that recently many strange villages appeared around here. However, the guy told her they were perfectly fine now. And then the kids spoke up that if any other monster were to come, he would stab them with this high-quality dagger. The guy stated they were reliable people. Hearing that, the girl believed them and thanked them for their help. The girl took something out to show her gratitude and gave them the signature product of their town, which was a perfume made with flowers cultivated at her home. The guy and his wife were glad to see she got things like that, so he offered the girls to stay the night here. The girls kindly accepted their offer, and the guy also offered them dinner as well. After that, the girls were given a good dinner which looked more like a feast, so the girls accepted it right away and had the dinner. Meanwhile, the village chief of theirs was keeping guard on the gates. A villager came and stated if the village chief was on gate duty, it could only mean that they got guests. The village chief agreed he was right and told him that the night would be lively now. Later, at midnight, the village was all quiet, and in the room where the girl guest was sleeping, she woke up from a little sound, and by the time she opened her eyes, she was shocked to see the sight of her little sister being strangled right in front of her. She tried to scream, but suddenly, one more person closed her mouth forcefully, and he told her she must have slept peacefully to make things quicker for them. The strangler was the very same guy who offered her to sleep over, and other villagers including the chief were also there. The girl tried to request for help, but the chief replied that this was their way of life, the life of crooks, who kills people like they killed these girls, and then loot all their belongings, including money, products, and even their hair. They didn't get much from looting them since they were just kids. After that, they made sure to take anything from those kids and later on bury them somewhere in the forest, along with the other dead people they looted and killed before. Next morning, when it was around 7 in the morning, the kids reminded their father about the time to get to work. And this time they wanted to pretend to be pirates that day. Their father left with reminding them to stay safe and active, and later on the guy joined with others to change the shifts. At that time, someone came to the village door and knocked. The guys on the watch duty went to check the gate, and when he opened the gate, he saw a shocking look of the little sister of the girl they just killed before. She asked them where her big sister was, but the guys were too terrified, and when she mentioned that they split up, the guys asked her how she was alive. The girl muttered how they asked, and then she kicked the whole gate, which broke down even the walls around it. The guys were too scared to get up and run, while the little girl actually turned out to be Raoul. The guys asked Raoul who he was, then Raoul reminded them with a quick summary that they must have heard rumors of the former hero, who came back to life, and before he could complete, one of the watchers tried to attack Raoul from behind. But Raoul just snapped, and that guy was trapped in his magic. After that, Raoul continued that the hero was reappearing and going around taking revenge. The guys in front were horrified as they asked if this person standing in front was in fact the hero Raoul, and Raoul agreed to them with a smile, while giving a proper introduction as the very famous trader of the kingdom. The village chief was wondering why the former hero was here in a village like this. Then Raoul asked him if he didn't know already, or probably he was confused because they know too much. The chief still repeated the same thing. Then Raoul asked him if a strange monster appeared around here almost a month ago. The chief replied he wasn't sure about it, because their village had been quite peaceful. Raoul laughed as he stated the chief might have forgotten due to his age. Then he took the liberty to remind them all about it and used his illusion magic to show them. Raoul showed the scene before the Demon King's defeat, when Raoul and his party reached a village where a terrifying sight awaited them. They were too late to come and help out the people of this village, because of which most of them ended up dead in the massacre by demons. Raoul wished there to be some survivors, and he quickly went to look after them. Whereas, somewhere in the village, demons were still going around killing people. The demons were trying not to kill too many humans, but it was just a game for them. Soon, they saw countless kids in front of them, and seeing them shiver for their life, the demon felt like killing 1 or 2 more humans for fun. He went and picked up one of the kids, and he told the other kids to watch one of them die carefully. The demon looked into those scared eyes of the kid, and then he told the kid that he didn't seem to need those eyes. The demon didn't care about the other kids or what they would go through from seeing the demon gauging out the eyes of that kid right in front of them. The kid was screaming in agony and pain from losing his eyes, and now that it wasn't of any use to them, the demon held the kid up to kill him. The other kids tried to stop the demon, and as the demon was about to crush the head of that kid, all the kids cried for help. And that was when our protagonist Raoul arrived there just in time and threatened the demon to release the kid. The demon looked back to see who dared to interrupt and recognized that it was the hero Raoul. Raoul warned the demon again to put the kid down with a cold look in his eyes, but the demon was shameless, so he asked back what if he didn't. Raoul quickly dashed and cut the hand of the demon which was holding that kid, and the date of this demon was now sealed in Raoul's hands. Raoul prioritized helping out the kid first, so he quickly asked his comrade Christiana to come over and use her healing magic on this kid. Christiana followed it at once, and then he looked at the kids who were all scared from everything. Raoul joined his hands in an apologetic manner for not being able to come sooner, after which, while Christiana was helping the injured, Raoul was paying respects to all the dead and killed the demons. After that, he went and asked the kid how his eyes were now, but Christiana informed him that it was too late for this kid's eyes. Raoul was unhappy with that, and the outer kids were finally able to breathe calmly for a moment. Raoul informed his comrades after a check of the area that this attack was from some demon slave traders who were targeting children from the slums. But seeing the situation here, he felt like it was too late now that many lives were lost. One of the kids looked at the hero and he went and started beating his hands on the hero's chest. Just why didn't you come sooner? The kid wanted to know the answer, while thinking that if only he had the same power he had, they might have been able to save everyone. The kid told him they have only been able to survive by working together, and they had been through many more things just like this demon attack, or some hunger. But the kid couldn't understand just why he still lost their beloved ones. However, the kids at this point were so tired of all this, they didn't even want to hear what a hero who got powers had to say. Raoul stood there to hear him, and then he stepped down and said he also had his hometown attacked by monsters, and even lost his mother in that. The kid could see the pain in Raoul's eyes, as Raoul told him that if he wasn't chosen as the hero, wouldn't be sure what would have happened. He told the kid that the power of hero was certainly great, but once upon a time, he also used to be a simple child from a countryside village just like him. The kids felt motivated by his words, and asked how they could protect everyone. He wished to help others like Raoul, and hearing that made Raoul happy enough. So, he gave the kid a dagger that had witnessed all of his battles. He asked the kid to hold on to the dagger dearly as a sign of his determination. The kid wasn't certain that he could become strong, and Raoul agreed he could become whatever he wished to be, as long as he desired to protect everyone. That was the time when those kids decided to do something to help others, so they joined the army as transport soldiers. Their first job was to transport goods to the Nor village, and the kids hoped they could keep doing good things and repay Raoul's kindness for rescuing them from the slums. However, their hopes and wishes didn't last long, since it was the time when Johannes told the kids that they would need to take a drug to make sure to protect themselves from the monsters. He informed everyone that they must take it together, while nobody was aware of the bad intentions behind it. Johannes had everyone take one drug each, and confirmed with them once distribution was done. Johannes started counting from 3 to 1 and all the supply soldiers took the drug at once. After that, his evil schemes took action as the kids suddenly felt dizzy, and their heads started to ache, while coughing up blood. They asked just what kind of drug they got, but Johannes didn't reply and his accomplice brought a horse for him. Johannes left from there with a note that this drug would make everyone full-fledged soldiers, and they would turn normal as long as they drink water. He told them to get the people at Nor village at the end of the forest to share some water, and just like that, all the kids were left with nothing but excruciating pain from the drug effects. Their bodies started changing its shape, while Johannes left hoping that the extermination would go well. His plan was to get the soldiers to clean the forest, while all of the supply soldiers turned into berserkers. They were now the result of the experiment done by Bennick, and the kid amongst them who got the dagger from the hero kept hold of it tightly to keep himself determined. All of them needed water desperately, and thus they traveled all the way to the Nor village. They killed the monsters that came through the way, and then went towards the gate of the village and knocked it. But from the look of the guy standing watch inside, he just saw some dangerous monsters requesting for water, which was more dangerous than just a request. He quickly shut the door and refused to have any water to give to monsters. The berserkers were pained from this, but they still kept on requesting for water, stating that just 1 cup would be enough. The kid with the dagger was about to crush the door of the village, but he somehow controlled himself, and instead hit his own head to calm down. They knew that their priority was to protect people, so they kept themselves controlled, while the villagers all caused a fuss. At that time, the village chief came and asked what was going on, and the watcher informed him that some strange monsters had appeared outside. The village chief had a look at them himself, and realized that these monsters were causing noise and trouble for them. After that, the supply soldiers slowly told the chief that they were soldiers but turned into this state due to drugs and now needed water, only a cup of water. They swore to not harm them, and after hearing them, the village chief was convinced that they were humans who would return to normal after drinking some water. So, he took out a water bottle and showed it to the berserkers. The village chief asked them if they wanted it, and the berserkers shouted a loud and cranky yes. But they weren't aware of the crookedness of the people here, as the village chief asked them how much they could pay for it. The soldiers didn't expect that, while the chief said that it was natural for supply soldiers to pay if they wanted something. The supply soldiers started crying, while the crooked villagers were laughing and shouting at the supply soldiers' current state. All of them called them ugly, disgusting, helpless creatures who weren't worth giving water. They won't stop but still ask those poor souls for money, and the supply soldiers begged for a cup repeatedly. The village chief stated they had all the water in the world, but it wasn't free, especially for spiders, who should be giving supplies to them, not asking for it. The village chief called the soldiers crooked instead, and left them to die like that. The kid with the dagger was losing his control, and they ended up killing themselves. So now in the present time, Raoul was here at the same gate in front of those same people who treated them harshly. He finished reminding them about all of that, and asked if it was all crystal clear to them now, or should he remind them of anything else. The village chief told Raoul that he created the story himself. Then Raoul asked him if that was the case. Then why did the dagger of his was in the hands of the kid here? He got that dagger back, and the father of that kid exclaimed that it was from that time. The chief told him to shut up, and then Raoul reminded those guys how they picked those supply soldiers' corpses to the bone. Also the fact that they've been taking advantage of the fact that their village was close to the national border, and looting people off. Everything was all just full of crimes. The village chief called his accusations baseless. Then Raoul told them that the dark magic he had was quite useful, because of which he could disguise himself like anyone and even read memories off the corpses. The chief called his powers absurd, as Raoul reminded them the exact words they said to those two girls, that this was their way of living proudly. The chief asked what hero Raoul needed now. The crooked wife exclaimed at Raoul, saying he had no right to criticize them. Then Raoul assured them for one thing at least, that he didn't care one bit about how these guys were leading a life of robbery. He was just simply taking revenge on those who had wronged his comrades. The villagers were left speechless, and out of concern for their lives, they started making excuses like they were just following the village chief, and they wouldn't have been able to survive if they didn't. Some even said they didn't know anything about such a thing happening. And at this point, Raoul figured these guys must have weak brains to forget things so easily. He asked them if they really thought that he would just listen to their excuses and let them live. Raoul told them not to make him laugh, and that now he would be thoroughly going to drill it into their rotten brains. Raoul made it clear that not a single soul among them could escape their crime anymore. The villagers were scared, and the chief asked Raoul just what he was planning to do with them. Raoul replied they would now be going on a field trip, and so he used his magic to make all of them start walking endlessly behind him. And thus, he initiated the beginning of the most painful field trip ever. After that, Raoul kept them walking for many hours without stopping. They asked how far he plans on making them walk, to which he replied they'll be walking until they reach their goal for the field trip, the Molt village. After that, he told them that the Molt village was in sight, and congratulated them for their hard work. The villagers were finally able to take a breath of relief after seeing the village, and hoped they could finally drink water now. But once Raoul reached out his hand and deactivated his illusion magic, and the villagers realized that they were still in their own village. The village chief and others had a shocking expression on their faces, and everyone wondered why they were still in their village. They thought if this was magic, but either way, they wanted to go and drink some water quickly. Villagers told Raoul to let them go now that they had reached their goal, to which Raoul replied this place wasn't the goal but just the start. However, Raoul claimed to be a bit tired, so, in front of them, he brought out water with magic, but only for himself. He started drinking it right in front of them as well, and laughed while stating that cold water surely tastes like heaven. The village chief requested him for some water as well, and Raoul asked him to repeat what he just said. The village chief said just one cup would be enough, and requested for the water again desperately. Raoul muttered the words, "just one cup," and wondered where he heard that line before. The village chief remembered those words as well, whereas Raoul just threw that bottle down, saying the waster was unfortunately gone. The chief and other villagers hoped there would be a single drop for them by some chance, as they ran after it, and even after trying, all of them were more thirsty than before. Now, he announced the final destination, Molt village again, and this field trip was fun for him, like the one where one always gets sent back to the starting location the moment they see the goal. Apparently, the villagers had no idea before that they were just going in circles around their Nor village, and the Molt was yet too far to visit. The villagers begged for them to at least let the kids go, hearing which Raoul stated that he was starting to get tired of this as well, so he decided to shorten the numbers by erasing the kids. The villagers shouted how he could do such a thing to children, and asked if he was that heartless. Raoul asked if he was really the heartless one, as he reminded them that those young soldiers were the same age as these kids. He wondered now which one of them was the heartless one. He reminded them how they just watched those children die, and now asking him to spare their own. Raoul stated it would be in their best interest to not anger him too much, as now it was time for retributive justice for their sins. Raoul stated now these villagers would lose their own children for a lifetime. Raoul then used magic to exert pressure inside the bodies of those children, while their parents could do nothing except watch him doing that. They shouted for their children to be left alone, but unfortunately Raoul didn't wish to stop and ended up rotating their necks to his pleasure, and killed all of them right in front of their parents. The dying children muttered to the villagers why didn't they just help those soldiers at that time, because of which they had to die now. The villagers cried non-stop for their children, and just when they were going closer to their corpses, Raoul clapped and stopped them right there. He declared that break time was over and made them start walking again without even getting the time to properly mourn for their children. He figured that he surely did get the time to erase the kids at the right time, and in reality, the kids here were just the illusions he made using dark magic while the real ones were actually still in town. He prevented them from leaving by casting illusion magic on it from outside. The kids were still in the village wondering where did everyone go, and they were left unharmed because Raoul didn't want to punish those who were not involved in any crime. However, the kids were still just idiots who didn't care about anything and still got back to doing things like playing steel games amongst each other. Raoul figured that the greatest punishment for the villagers was to take their children's life in front of them and then take them along to a scorching hot desert again. For that, he used dark magic to prepare the stage and made them walk in that desert. Their skin got dry enough to start bleeding, along with the extreme thirst. This was surely space created with illusion magic, however it was no different from a real desert. The villagers' skin was starting to create problems for them to walk, while their sore throats were feeling as if it was being pulled from inside. They desperately wanted water to walk any further, and their bodies were starting to hurt from head to toe. Raoul was amused to see them in this state, and figured that they might have experienced the same degree of thirst as those supply soldiers. So, he put an end to their field trip and broke his illusion magic to let the villagers know that they've finally arrived at the Mulk village. The villagers and their chief were relieved to see that they would finally be able to drink some water and felt like they were saved. But their torture was not over just yet, as he smirked. At the same time from the Mulk village wall, the watchers saw the people from Nor and alerted others about the incoming group. They were able to hardly tell that they were humans, still they took their posts just to maintain precautions. The guards told them to keep the gates closed for now, and they needed to see whether these people were enemies or not. The gates of Mulk village were closed properly, and then the people from Nor village started to beat the gate desperately. The guards thought they were attacking the door, while the chief of Nor village was shouting why they closed the gates on him. The Mulk guards heard that he was the chief and others were from Nor village. However, they noticed that all those people were looking deranged, with their skin all festered up. It gave off the impression that they might be infected by a plague, and the chief exclaimed why were they saying that about them, and only rats wound up refusing to lend a hand to the weak. Then Raoul shouted from behind the crowd of Nor village men, how could Mulk guards be this bad? The guards got to know that Nor people wanted water and begging for help, and they considered giving them that much water. Raoul realized that Mulk village people were being quite kind, so he decided to do some kindness as well by changing his look to a common villager. After that, he started shouting to those guards that if they didn't give them water, then they would loot them just like all the people they've looted before. The village chief and others were shocked to hear that, and this actually had a bigger perspective change in the guards who were going to offer water. But now that they heard of this threat they were doubtful. But our stage master Raoul didn't hesitate to confirm those doubts of the guards by saying it was a piece of cake for them to kill Mulk villagers. The village chief desperately shouted that the man was lying and he wasn't even from their village. Chief tried to tell the guards that the guy in the back was trying to kill them, but from the guards' perspective, all those Nor villagers looked really deranged. No matter how hard the Nor villagers tried to convince them, they couldn't believe their words. The wife of the crook from before shouted for water again. Then Raoul forced on her ribbon and made it fly towards the guards. They were confused to see a cloth flying, until one of the guards recognized it and shouted for the ribbon to be given back to him. Once he got the ribbon, he exclaimed it was the present that his late wife gave to our daughter, and asked just how he managed to get the ribbon for his daughter who hadn't come home in weeks. The guard was extremely enraged, asking just how it was possible, to which the crooked wife replied to dodge the blame that it was something she got from her husband. The guard replied that his wife had knitted it for their daughter, so there was no other ribbon in the world like this. The other Mulk guards stated that this old man had been waiting here for his daughters every single day, And now that they got leads, the Molt guards understood that these villagers were the ones who killed their daughter. Raoul's plan seemed to have gone splendidly, and then he shouted at the guards that if they gave them water, the village people would tell them where his daughters were buried. The Molt guards yelled at those bastards to not screw with them, and no way in hell they would give them any water. The village chief realized that they were doomed now, while Raoul wanted to add up more fun. So he used his magic to use his magic and send the villagers to charge at the gates of Molt village. Molt guards get alerted after seeing this ambush, whereas the village chief was damned to be used like before. The villagers were all controlled into pushing the gates of the Molt village too hard, and the gate was going to fall down. The Garda thought they were under attack, so they started a counter-attack by throwing rocks and telling others to do the same. They hit those guys with stones, starting with the village chief, while declaring there was no way they would let them inside this village and protect it from them. They stone each and every one of the villagers, while they couldn't even move from their spots. The guy screamed at them to give him his daughters back, but now he couldn't do anything except stone these guys mercilessly, and keep going at it without leaving a single one. The Molt village guards didn't show any sign of stopping, no matter how much the villagers begged, and thus they ended up killing them with the stones. The remaining ones desperately requested for water as Raoul came closer to him. Just seeing his feet was enough for the village chief to understand that Raoul was there, and surprisingly, he had a bottle of water in his hand. Raoul teased the village chief, asking if he wanted the water in his hands, but even if the chief begged for it in an improper, energy-lacking voice, Raoul just asked him to repeat it again. The village chief was looking in a horrible state, and he shouted again with all the energy he had left that he wanted water. Damn water. Raoul replied surely he would give some water, and just when the chief felt like his thirst would be fine, Raoul spoke up and demanded how much he could pay for it. He told the chief that if there was something he wanted, then he got to pay for it first. The Nor village chief was left hurt, while Raoul muttered just who was the shameless one now. After that, the village chief kept begging for water, while Raoul kept drinking it in front of them. And just like that, the villagers' lives ended with thirst and beaten up bodies which were left there without any burial. Meanwhile, the kids in Nor village were wondering where the elders went. Then Raoul appeared before their village, and his shadow made the kids think that it must be the elders. They were hungry and wanted to have something to eat, but unfortunately, Raoul broke the news to them out of nowhere, that they would now be turned into soldiers because of the crimes their parents committed. Kids asked him who the hell he was to order them like that, and asked him about the whereabouts of their mother and father. Raoul told them that their parents won't be coming back because of a disaster in their way. The kids shooted for their parents' tauns returned, while yelling they didn't want to become soldiers. The kids had gotten used to the same life as their parents, and when Raoul saw the influence the kids had, he figured correcting them would be better. He took things from those kids which were stolen, and they shouted at him to give their stuff back. Raoul laughed to see these kids were just like their parents, and then the crooked kids told him they would kill him and take things back. He figured that since these kids liked killing that much, then they would be perfect soldiers for fighting monsters. So he used his magic on them, which made the kids want to be soldiers. After that, Raoul took those kids along with him to the military base near Nor village. There, the station soldiers at the gate noticed someone was coming, and upon a closer look, it was the kids of the village. All the kids told them that they wanted to become soldiers, while Raoul was watching the situation from up above. He figured that those kids would at least live a better life this way, and hoped that their children would hear the same from them later on. However, Raoul wondered a bit if those kids would be happy this way, or should he have remained like them before. But moving on ahead, he got up ahead, figuring it should be about time for him to make the finishing touches for his revenge on the princess. After that, when he arrived at the royal capital, the first thing he did was to visit the prison. He laid many dead bodies on the way to cells, and kept killing more soldiers who came in his way to reach the actor he needed for the final performance of the princess. So, this time, he wanted to have one more lead actress for the act, which was none other than the commander of the Royal Order of Chivalry, Sandler. He told Sandler it was surely a long time since they hadn't seen each other, and it was clearly visible by her state that the princess must have treated him like this. Sandler claimed that she was simply accepting the punishment she deserved, and without moving her eyes, Sandler damned the hero and wished he would be dead. Raoul told her to notice him better, that he was here, and while she was in her imagination, Raoul offered his hand and told her to come back to reality. He announced to her that she and the princess would be performing the last act, devoting love which was never without jealousy. Later on, the capital was in commotion because Sandler was nowhere to be found, which was getting on the nerves of mostly the princess. She barked orders for the soldiers to just find Sandler quickly, and this event of prison escape, along with guards being killed, was causing hell to break on her life. Her underlings told her that due to Hero's hex magic, any kind of murder was not possible inside the royal capital. Hearing the mention of the hero, Victoria was reminded of his words that he would return once she has a pretty face again. Victoria quickly checked her face, and after realizing it was almost back to complete restoration, she was scared of Raoul's return. Victoria knew she couldn't sit idle, so she quickly told the soldiers to increase the security around the castle and bring Sandler back to her. Now, a few hours before this commotion, Raoul was standing before Sandler, who just wanted to kill the hero with all her might but couldn't even move an inch in this state. Sandler inside believed that she was not to blame, because she was just fulfilling the orders given by the princess. She damned the hero for not obeying the princess and thought if only he listened to Victoria, everything would have been fine. Raoul could see Sandler was gone totally crazy, but he couldn't let it happen because she was after all the protagonist of his next show. So, he used illusion magic to bring Sandler back to consciousness, and in the next moment, Sandler's eyes widened as she saw the Princess Victoria calling out her name and standing in front of her. From Sandler's point of view, the princess was telling her to prostrate herself properly like she wanted her to. Sandler was enchanted to see the princess again, while in reality it was just an illusion of Raoul, telling Sandler if she reflected on her actions. Sandler admitted she was the one to make mistakes, and she asked the princess what she could do to apologize. Victoria replied that if that was the case, then she would grant her an opportunity to atone for her sins. Sandler agreed to do anything, and she asked the princess if she still remembered the day when she first started to serve her as a knight. Raoul, who was in Victoria's form, stated she still remembers how Sandler killed Victoria's troublesome brothers even if she was not ordered to do so. Victoria said it was surely a pure way to help her princess. Then Victoria asked her to not betray her expectations again. Sandler agreed to live up to those expectations and kissed the hands of Victoria while being unaware of the real face behind her. Raoul was glad to have Sandler back in action, and then he phrased to Sandler that her undying loyalty would now be rewarded, as he healed all her wounds and gave her an armor on her body with a sword. After that, she informed him that the stage was now set right before her, by the side of her beloved princess. Meanwhile, people in the castle were looking out for her, and as they wondered where she must have gone out and disappeared, suddenly one of them shouted to the current commander to look behind. The commander turned back to the sight of the blood flowing from the head of a person who was killed by Sandler. All the soldiers were shocked to see Sandler like that, and more than that, they wondered just how Sandler managed to break the hero's hex magic. But in the next moment, Sandler beheaded the commander in front of all the soldiers. She started laughing while being inside her own imagination, while the soldiers told her that she must not pass from here. Sandler kept laughing as she was not even listening to anyone's words, so she just kept moving on and killed all those soldiers as well, leading to a bloodbath all around the corridor. Inside her own head, Sandler was believing that she was doing everything for the princess, and thought if she reached the princess now, she would praise her as an intelligent dog. Meanwhile, Princess Victoria was actually shouting off just where Sandler ran off to. She was taking all of this as her insult, and then one of her henchmen came and informed that their new torture device was currently being arranged, and once Sandler was apprehended, she could use it to Heart's content. Victoria was intrigued by that, and suddenly there were loud screams coming to the courtroom. Victoria wondered what was going on, and after a few seconds, Sandler entered the courtroom covered with blood all around her, and a crazy smile on her face. Victoria was shocked by this terrifying sight, as Sandler laughed while saying sorry to the princess for keeping her wait for this long. And then she showed her the head of a person in her hands. Victoria was scared of this sight and she screamed out loud, along with the servants beside her. They couldn't just stay calm after seeing a freshly severed head, whereas Victoria exclaimed to others to hurry up and stop Sandler in her tracks. Whereas Sandler asked the princess to look at her offering to her, and said that the head in her hands was of the king's aides. Sandler stated these killed ones were those who insulted the princess, and said it was also the princess who asked Sandler to do that. Whereas, in reality it was Raoul who disguised as Princess Victoria and asked Sandler to kill those people of the king who might come in Victoria's way, and said that they might need some punishment. So now, Sandler told Victoria, who was clueless about it. Victoria denied all these accusations, but the guys who were standing beside her thought Victoria as a traitor who did things to defy even the king. Victoria knew she would be in trouble even if these were false claims, whereas Sandler added that since the king was currently lying in his sick it would be natural for Victoria to become the ruler of the country. Victoria was shocked to see that even if she hadn't said all of that, she did want it all, and somehow Sandler knew it. And the reason Sandler knew of it was because Raoul told her in Victoria's disguise before. After that, Sandler asked the princess to praise her for meeting her expectations. Victoria's hate towards Sandler grew exponentially, and out of extreme anger, she just took the sword from the soldier beside her and went to kill Sandler with it for being a good-for-nothing to cause trouble for her. But before her sword could hit Sandler, it was bounced back because of the protective spell Raoul used secretly. Princess Victoria fell back from the recoil, and when Sandler went to ask her if she was hurt, Victoria yelled at Sandler to not touch her with filthy hands. Sandler was taken back from that, as being called filth was something she didn't expect from her dear princess. Victoria called Sandler a piece of trash, who just ruined her status and even went against her will. Princess Victoria went crazy and shouted at Sandler, calling her evil multiple times, and hearing that Sandler got hurt, and she stood there still. Victoria then told Sandler that she would have killed her off already if it wasn't for the hero's magic. And not only that, but starting from now on, Princess Victoria revoked Sandler's status as a knight. Sandler felt like she was no longer needed by her, while Victoria insulted Sandler again by saying she was nothing but a toy for her, a toy she could replace whenever she wanted. Sandler couldn't help but feel broken, because she did her best for the princess' sake. Then she heard the voice of Victoria telling her that it would be her greatest desire to be killed by her. It was actually Raoul's doing, but Sandler thought Victoria was speaking that, whereas Victoria was actually cursing her to go and have a miserable death. Victoria ordered the soldiers to take Sandler to the dungeon, and thus they went and caught Sandler as they were ordered. Victoria also ordered a burial for the corpses of the ministers who were killed. However, she didn't expect that Sandler would go and kill them off like that. Victoria did agree inside that those people were certainly thorns on her side, but she wanted to kill them at the right time later. She was still frustrated ever since the day Raoul attacked her wedding, and blamed that it was all his fault for why she ended up like this. Victoria tried thinking if there was some way out of being suspect for minister murders. Then she recalled the news of others like Brown and Lucas dying, and thought that she could blame these murders also on the hero instead, since he was well known right now to be murdering people. And while she was at it, Victoria smirked as she thought these chain of events would lead her to become the ruler of this country. And in that case, she won't even need to have children since she could just rule by herself. Victoria now wanted to be the first queen of the kingdom of Curs. She knew that Raoul must be around here right now, and he also should have been the one to make Sandra commit murders leading to this chaos here. She figured that if somehow she managed to take away dark magic from the hero, she might be able to turn the tables, for which Victoria remembered she had a pawn for just this time, who could use purification magic against Raoul. It was none other than Saint Christiana, who once used to be in the same party with the hero. Victoria planned on using her to crush the hero Raoul with her own hands and send him back to the land of the dead. Victoria couldn't stop her amusing laughs from this scene, and her servant beside her could see she was feeling entertained. Victoria laughed as she claimed it was surely a good time for her, because a warm-hearted fool had come back. Victoria claimed that this foolish person would be the one to make her dreams come true, and seeing she was having fun, her servant stated he would go and prepare the latest torture device. Victoria was looking forward to it, while the servant she sent to prepare torture device seemed to have his own plans. Or to be more precise, hero Raoul had his own plans for the upcoming show. After that, Victoria held the execution of Sandler, and the people were surprised to see that the former commander of the Royal Order of Chivalry, Sandler, was captured 3 days ago and now just being executed. The executioners announced to everyone that they would now carry out execution of the traitor Sandler. The people started accusing Sandler for failing to catch the hero during the marriage announcement parade, and because of her, they were now trapped inside the royal capital. People put all their hatred towards Sandler, while Sandler was broken down from inside and just taking whatever Victoria was doing. After that, Victoria announced Sandler as the dinner who caused the downfall of her, and even defied His Majesty the King by killing the ministers. Not only that, but she also incurred the wrath of the hero, and caused herself to be falsely accused before just because she set the village on fire. Sandler tried to speak against those false accusations on herself, some of which were actually Victoria's own doing. But to shut her mouth, Victoria stomped on Sandler's head and again repeated that it was Sandler who got them in this situation. People started blaming Sandler for everything as well, so they yelled out for Sandler to be killed. Nobody heard what Sandler had to say, while Victoria told everyone that citizens who suffered must be the ones to give Sandler punishment together. So, the stones were then provided to the citizens by the soldiers, and Victoria thought this was the right move to direct the public tension away from her, and resolved all her problems from King Aides being killed, suffering distrust from people, stress of being imprisoned in the royal capital, just by this one public execution. And she thought if she only sent Hero Raoul to his grave now, she was sure to become a hero herself. Victoria was getting too full of herself, and the people were asking the princess happily to give them orders to punish the sinner themselves. Meanwhile, Raoul's previous comrades Wendell and Christiana were also present there looking forward to this scene. While the mother complex Prince Emil was clinging to his mother as he was scared of his future wife Victoria. He didn't want to be here anymore, because he was scared to witness things turning real scary once again. After that, Victoria announced to everyone it was time to punish the traitor, and then all those evil citizens were ready with stones. They made loud statements like "Go to hell, traitor," and the soldiers covered Victoria to protect her from any surprise attacks. Everyone was calling Sandler a dishonor to the royal knight title, for which she must apologize for her death, making Sandler afraid of what was coming at her. Suddenly, in the next moment, all the citizens started throwing stones at her from all directions, wanting her to die. They called her shameless, sinner, traitor, killer, and all sorts of bad things, without even once listening to Sandler's pleas of stating that she was just strictly following orders to protect everyone as a knight. But the citizens didn't trust what she said at all, and accused her of using them to get close to the princess, as the stones kept raining at her from all directions. She begged everyone to stop, but they didn't care if she bled or cried in pain because the citizens were showing their true faces, in the cover of Princess's order. Sandler was most hurted by all of this torture being Victoria's order, while Victoria told Sandler that she had outlined her use totally to the princess and the country. Sandler's eyes were starting to lose their light after hearing that, and she kept getting lower inside thinking back on her life. But she still kept muttering to the princess again and again while crying in pain. But Victoria just didn't care, and said if she didn't cry much and scream more, people won't get excited enough. Victoria called out the soldiers who were stationed behind, and asked them if there was something she wanted. Victoria told them to go and toss the sinner Sandler into the crowd of citizens and call it a day. She figures that since Victoria couldn't die because of Hero's magic, Sandler would at least keep suffering continuously at the hands of the public. The soldiers agreed to her at once, so they went to Sandler and tossed her amongst the citizens. The light in Sandler's eyes were at the limit of breaking down now, while the citizens became just some hungry for fun creatures, who wanted to ravish the body of Victoria. They scratched her body, pulled her from all directions, tore her clothes, and most of them just wanted to take a look at Sandler's body. Sandler couldn't help but suffer at their hands, while the people were doing all sorts of things to her. Even the woman of the royal capital thought that the guys were going quite wild for a killer, as they exposed Sandler's well skin. Victoria, on the other hand, was having a real fun time, and she started laughing to see this scene unfolding right in front of her. She declared this was what happened to one who interfered with her. Wendell and Christiana were just quietly watching them. Suddenly, there was a voice from behind Victoria, mentioning about why don't she try looking back at herself. Victoria knew this voice, and when she turned back to check, it was surely the same Hero Raoul sitting on the cross used for execution. He told everyone that even after what he did before, none of them seemed to have changed much. And now that he was here, he would make sure to teach them proper manners, including the dearest princess. He was casually sitting on the execution cross, and the princess welcomed him with a smile this time. Raoul was enchanted to see how everyone from the crowd was gathering for a purge, and no matter how he looks at them, the Princess Victoria seems to be the most virtuous one among them. However, he figured that it didn't matter anymore who was more evil, since these people just enjoyed themselves even when Hero Raoul was being executed. Raoul reminded everyone if they had already forgotten what Princess Victoria and Sandler went through the previous time. The people's faces were in shock even thinking about it, and then it was time to introduce the actors for today's final show, which the crowd might love because they were so interested in drama. He declared that there seemed to be a full line of traitors this time, starting with Saint Christiana, Archmage Wendell, and Dame Sandler, followed by the last and Raoul's favorite one, Princess Victoria. Victoria laughed and said that he got mistaken for the actors, where he was the main actor, the former hero. Raoul laughed he won't do the pity of taking her lead role, hearing which Victoria flustered, unaware of the fact that today Hero would not be going to tell a story to make this stage even more entertaining. He exclaimed it would also be open to the public who gathered here to see shows they love watching, whenever someone was punished regardless of their crimes or accusations, and today they would be witnessing some real shocking exposures. Raoul announced that the princess and Sandler were not the only ones who betrayed the former hero, and for starters, he would begin with sharing the story of the Archmage Wendell's story. Raoul uses his illusion magic to show everyone the reality of the time back when Raoul was captured and imprisoned by the princess. Everyone could see it from that time, in the castle, when Princess Victoria was mocking Raoul by reminding him in prison now his older sister was killed. But she couldn't understand how he could still have that strong spirit. Victoria wondered if she should adorn his sister's fetus in front of him, to which Raoul had warned her to stay away from them. He dared her if she trample on more of his loved ones, he would tear her apart. Victoria stated she doesn't want to engage in a war with him, but he should still hurry and become her already. At that time, a person came to the cell and Victoria muttered there was still time for that, but it's fine now. Whereas, Raoul was shocked when he saw Wendell standing in front of his prison. Raoul smiled and asked Wendell if he was all right, or the princess hurted or threatened him. Wendell stood there for a moment, until he spoke up an apology to Raoul that he was having to go through such torture because of them. Wendell agreed that he was being threatened by Victoria, and said he would be left not pursued if he just didn't come in her way. Raoul didn't like that he was threatened to be persuaded. Then Wendell added that if Raoul became Victoria's servant then she might let them go. Raoul was shocked as he understood that by them, it meant Christiana as well. He thought she was captured as well, which showed just how low the process could get to achieve her wish. And just for that, Raoul's older sister and everyone else suffered. While Wendell seemed like he lost hope as well, and asked Raoul to become her manservant. Raoul told him not to worry, because he won't allow anyone else to die, and if offering just one body of his would save everyone else, then he would give in happily. Wendell showed a worried face at first, but right in the very next moment, Wendell showed a shady smile, and said just how much of a fool Raoul could be. Wendell started laughing as he called Raoul to be the one to stoop so low, and instead of the world's strongest hero, they should name him the world's strongest imbecile. Wendell's laughs confused Raoul more and more as he asked what was Wendell talking about. Wendell came out clear to him that everything he said was clearly a lie, and in reality, everyone had betrayed him. He made Raoul know the funny fact that he doesn't have a single comrade, and the sound of this saddened Raoul with surprise. Wendell just said that whatever comrade Raoul thought he had were either dead or just betrayed him. Raoul couldn't believe all that, and he asked if Wendell wasn't his comrade who put his life on the line to fight the Demon King with him, to which Wendell replied that even if that happens, he never really thought of Raoul as a comrade. And to be more precise, Raoul was just a stepping stone for him. Raoul started crying as he didn't know that he was alone all this time, to think of Wendell as his comrade and even trusting him. Whereas, Wendell just laughed it off and told Raoul not to cry like a baby who might just calm down after sucking his sister's milk. But then again, he teased Raoul more by reminding she was already dead. Suddenly, in the present time, Wendell broke the illusion to stop others from watching it anymore. But at this point people already saw a lot. Raoul stated that the climax was just about to come if he hadn't interrupted, to which Wendell replied that he didn't have time for someone who cried rivers of betrayal. The people were shocked to know Wendell did such a thing, and Wendell smirked. Then he went to the crowd and told them that they shouldn't believe such nonsense conjured by an illusion spell. Wendell told a girl among the crowd that the former hero before them was the felon who killed the heroes of this country, General Brown and Dr. Bennick. He asked them who would they believe now among him and Raoul. The girls were charmed by Wendell's fake smiles, and they claimed that Wendell won't do something like that. Raoul was looking at these hopeless people, while Wendell was trying to act sane by stating no matter how much Raoul succumbed to the power of darkness, it won't matter. Raoul used his magic and he found out something odd, so he asked Wendell that if there was anything he wanted to say to him, then he should at least do it in person, as Wendell vanished into thin air. Victoria was left shocked to see that Wendell was not even here, and all this time, it was just an illusion. Raoul laughed while stating that sending an illusion was a sure way of showing how worried he was to face Raoul, and figured that their meeting shall have to wait for next time. And for now, he would come next to the other person, Saint Christiana. Christiana stated that she had never betrayed Raoul or anything, to which Raoul asked if that was really the case, considering that actually Christiana was the mastermind behind it all. He mentioned that he knows that she was the one who instigated the princess, and doesn't think that Raoul knows about it all how she was behind this current mask. He told her that she should talk normally since she wasn't working right now, and once Christiana figured there was no point hiding anything, she apologized for behaving fake before and called the hero a pervert for looking into her past. She excused herself from sharing love stories with the princess, hearing that Raoul used his illusion magic to show everyone what exactly happened at the time before Raoul came to report Victoria. She heard from Raoul that they would now enter the final battle against the Demon King, and while he was reporting her about the events, Victoria was inside moved by that strong gaze of Raoul. She just wanted to have Raoul to herself, and defile those eyes as soon as possible with the very hands of her. Then Christiana went and whispered into Victoria's ears that she was surely looking excited for some reason. Sandler backed Christiana away from the princess, after which Christiana stated she just happened to be passing by and it was coincidence that she ran into the princess. Christiana told Victoria that it looked like her heart was stolen by Raoul. Christiana raised her expectations, saying Raoul was surely enchanting, while Victoria called her a shameless saintess who doesn't get how a princess like herself feels. Victoria warned Christiana to be in limit because if she insulted Victoria, then she would cast her to death sentence. After that, she left Christiana like that and started walking away. Then Christiana spoke up that she had the god's message for her. Victoria replied that a god won't be able to control her life. Then Christiana suddenly told her that God said that Christiana and Raoul were fated to be united. Victoria stopped there, while Christiana added that only princesses could have Raoul. Victoria was interested in hearing more about it, so she asked Christiana to speak further and thus, from that time, Christiana kept raising Victoria's inner feelings of wanting Raoul more and more every day. And eventually Christiana told him that Raoul seemed to be gaining people's favor a lot as if he wanted to be some god. Victoria thought she was right since he had been treated like a great savior, but she knew that Raoul was just a hero, not a god. And Christiana told Princess that they should remind him that he was just a mere boy, which would be better for him. And that was when Christiana whispered some more words into Victoria's ears, and this time she used magic to raise Victoria's feelings towards Raoul even more. She touched all the fantasies Victoria had inside, and slowly brought them out with more of her wanting Raoul's masculine desires, and turned him into a beast for her own sake. And she told Victoria if she managed to do that, then Raoul would no longer be able to live without Victoria. Victoria started fantasizing even more time after time, as Christiana's whispering grew, and at some point she started thinking of herself as an apostle of the Lord, and just like how she provided salvation to countless people to this day, she was certain that she could provide those fake salvation of hers to the hero. But in reality, her salvation meant only to make Raoul as her chained servant dog like a slave, and make him lick her feet and sometimes even the places for her pleasure. Her fantasies for Raoul started going as crazy as her personality, and the princess started painting heavily just by the imagination of it. Her legs started trembling, and then she somehow collected herself and called out to Sandler to start looking into everyone that Raoul had ever been involved with, and find out their whereabouts, including how deeply they were connected to him, leading Christiana's plan into motion. Chapter 31. Now back into reality, Victoria yelled out for Raoul to stop this nonsense, and he didn't expect she would lose it this quick. Whereas Victoria was trembling and panting while standing in her place, with a shy red face. Raoul teased Victoria while exclaiming in front of everyone that the princess was now embarrassed about her fetishes being exposed. Whereas Victoria tried denying all those things and called him a liar. After that, she smiled and stated that now the happy look on Raoul's face won't last for long because she had found a way to deal with his power's dark magic weakness. Raoul stated she was surely spilling some interesting things, while Victoria made a gloomy evil face as she continued saying that the weakness of his magic would be the holy magic of the Saintess Christiana. Raoul knew this was coming, but Princess Victoria was unaware of that, so she just kept spouting out nonsense of her superior thinking to keep the counter ready, as she laughed more and announced they don't need to fear Raoul anymore now. She claimed to protect everyone from him, and put an end to this curse on the city to regain their freedoms. People were really hopeful after hearing that, and they started thinking highly of the princess again. Whereas Victoria was making sure to let her sorry-ass attitude think she was having the upper hand here, and put an end to Raoul's life for the second time. She told Raoul that he was now at the exhibition, so he should be grateful that now Victoria would see him to his end, until his body would rot away till its nails. After that, Victoria turned to Saintess Christiana and asked her to kill Raoul and teach him a lesson with her holy powers. Christiana didn't seem to have much reaction, but she plainly said she would try what she asked. Victoria declared this as the end of former hero Raoul, as Christiana was about to cast her holy magic. Raoul was still confidently standing there, while Victoria was laughing like the garbage she was. Then Christiana said she was just kidding, and apologized to Victoria for refusing her order straight away. Victoria was caught off by that and her eyes wanted to just get out and glare at Christiana, after which she went and shouted at her for uttering nonsense. She again asked Christiana to hurry up and kill the hero to save the citizens, to which Christiana replied that she did want to save the citizens, but she couldn't obey Princess Victoria's orders, which was something included in Raoul's plans. Christiana claimed that she would be marked as a traitor if she listened to Victoria, and hearing that Victoria was left shocked because it could only mean one thing. Whereas Raoul and Christiana had before went to the king of the country, who mentioned that he let Victoria live because she seemed to have some use as a woman, but for her to just go and kill her retainers was a clear offense. Christiana knew it was Raoul's doing but she kept quiet about it, after which the king declared that Victoria was an eyesore, so she must be disposed of right away. Christiana informed all of this to Victoria, and since it was the king's order, she must obey them. Victoria was left frozen as her world changed upside down. Then she screamed just why her father wanted to dispose of her. She couldn't believe it and thus Victoria accused Christians of lying, because according to her, there was no way that the king would abandon her. Raoul then asked Christiana to show Victoria the proof she was entrusted with by the king. It was the evidence that the king does not trust his daughter from now on, and then Christiana acted dumb for forgetting something that important. After that, she started looking into her purse and after a second, found it. Victoria was seeing her world and ambitions ending in front of her, as Christiana gave her the document which serves as a direct proof, or we can say from Raoul's perspective, a present to Victoria from her beloved father. Victoria was sweating the moment she held the letter, and couldn't doubt that the crest on it was real for sure no matter how much she tried to deny it. The reaction of the citizens was shocking, as they didn't expect that His Majesty the King would himself want to dispose of his very own daughter. Victoria was annoyed at the sight of the document, while Raoul was having as much fun seeing Victoria her downfall right at her own hands. After reading it, Victoria was taken aback with the deepest of her frustrations, while Raoul sneaked up behind her and took the liberty to read the letter for her and the citizens. The letter stated clearly that the king saw no use of her life any longer, and if it could be used as a sacrifice for the hero, then Victoria was to accept what she reaped herself by causing the hero's wrath. It said clearly that Victoria was nothing but a useless eyesore of a daughter, and even though she would get to die a meaningful death. Christiana pitied Princess Victoria's life as she seemed to have been abandoned by her real father. Raoul laughed on the word sacrifice, as if he was some demon, while Victoria still tried to decline this to be real and she tore the letter apart. Victoria ordered the knights to seize the hero and the saintess quickly, but they didn't move from their spots. Victoria yelled at them how they could possibly believe all this was set up by the hero Raoul. One of the knights tried to calm the princess and tell this was real, and Christiana told Victoria as well that she shouldn't bother the knights anymore. She assured the knights that they don't need to obey princess commands anymore, as all the words of their king were true. Meanwhile, Victoria was making the ugliest expression ever as she wondered just how those petty knights could dare to hesitate in following her orders. She told them that they serve as her puppet and must obey her every command. The knights just stayed there with no reaction. And seeing this scene made Raoul laugh out loud on just how much of a fool Princess could be, even if all the things had totally turned against her. Victoria shouted everything and everyone was useless, including the soldiers. Victoria panted heavily as she screamed her neck to the fullest, asking if all those soldiers were really daring to betray her. Raoul laughed at the sight of the princess totally breaking down, which was nothing short of a spectacle. Victoria couldn't bear to hear any more mockery of her from Raoul. While she still hinged on everything being Saul Raoul's fault, she shouted, yelled and screamed the same thing again and again as she went up close to Raoul and hit his chest with her hands. Raoul told her to stop making him laugh, asking if she really thought this was enough to kill him. He just slapped her to the ground and stated it was surely a nice scene now. That princess was the one as dog now. Victoria had intense hatred for Raoul, but he just told her that this show was now coming closer to the end and he should report it to the king, that he witnessed a quite funny grand finale. Victoria was crazy so she wanted to cling to any hope of survival. Then she started laughing and said that her father no longer has any other children besides her. Therefore, she thought that he couldn't afford to lose her because she made sure of it through Sandler to kill all the other children of the king, making her the sole heir to the throne. Victoria lost her mind totally on this one, as she laughed and let out frustration at the same time, stating that she was the only one. But then, Raoul told her that there were others, hearing which left Victoria unable to react. Raoul told her that the king actually had 3 more illegitimate princes, and this turn of events totally wasted all the groundwork Victoria had been laying down for years. Victoria was left completely defeated when she heard that king had been long aware of her schemes, and so he had been keeping more sons hidden from her. The king declared Victoria's actions as treason, due to which he didn't deem her fit for the throne. Victoria couldn't understand just why it had to be like this, while Raoul told her that he might know a very accurate reason behind it, which was simply that Victoria was not loved by all of her subjects. Victoria couldn't deny that because all this time she had been ordering them. Raoul asked her frankly how was the feeling of being betrayed by everyone she trusted, which made her go insane. As Raoul stated that everything she believed was her power turned out to be just a temporary illusion, and now that it was over, Victoria could only cry and do nothing but feel the pain. Her mental state went straight to hell, while she still said it was all a lie. But Raoul was laughing at the pitiful face she was making at that time, and he thought that everyone else should see as well how the most beautiful face in the entire kingdom of Kurz looked like with his magic. Raoul made her face visible to all the citizens, after seeing which they were shocked to see what the hell was that face, which was hard to believe it was the princess. They started reflecting on how they could have considered something this ugly as the national treasure, and also follow the commands of someone like that foolishly. Meanwhile, some people who had always hated princesses from the inside were finally speaking openly how they despised Victoria from the beginning. All of them had been following her simply because she was the daughter of the king, and now that she was worthless, they couldn't even look at her terrible face. At that time, citizens noticed Sandler was laughing, and she believed that the princess now doesn't have anyone else beside her now. Victoria also called out for Sandler with her ugly face, and seeing their drama, Raoul used his magic to heal Sandler a little. After that, Sandler somehow managed to move just like Raoul wanted her to, and eventually, Sandler reached the stage and entered the platform with a sword in her hands, and Princess Victoria in her heart. Victoria told Sandler to stay away from her, and don't even try to come closer because she was scared of Sandler with a sword. She begged someone to protect her, but the knights made it clear that they serve the king, so they won't fight for a wench like Victoria again. Victoria knew she was doomed now, and in the next moment, Sandler hugged her, which was more like a hand trap. Sandler was totally broken down and went crazy in her own imaginations, so she spoke up that Sandler won't be able to live anymore without her. And if Princess was going to die, Sandler thought of another option as she placed Victoria properly on the ground and made her unable to move by sitting on her. Sandler claimed it was her duty to rescue her lovely princess from this suffering, as she lifted her sword in the air. Victoria laughed while stating it was pointless because there was still the curse on the royal capital not allowing anyone to kill. So, Victoria commanded Sandler to put down her sword and this ridiculous behavior. Then, Raoul came and asked her if she had already forgotten about the murders committed by Sandler. He was looking straight at her from above, while Victoria didn't want to die, and she begged someone to stop this from happening. Raoul told her that in this moment, whether Sandler kills her or not depended only on him, so it confirmed to Victoria that there was no helping her now. And thus, it all ended with Victoria being stabbed by sword straight through her belly, at the time when she cried, shouted and spread tears to her mental and physical limit. Victoria coughed up a lot of blood alongside, as she passed away in this tragic manner. Sandler laughed, and as she adored the princess face, she told her that she couldn't go yet because she wanted to go along with Princess. Means that Sandler was planning on taking her own life as well right above Victoria, and wished both of them to be together in the afterworld. Sandler stabbed her neck and the blood splattered on Victoria's corpse, after which Sandler slowly passed away wishing to be waiting for the princess. Everyone in the crowd was terrified from this view, as they just witnessed two deaths right in front of them, and it made them all shout out. Sandler took her last breath while hugging Victoria, and she wished to remain with her for the rest of eternity, be it as corpses or the afterworld. The hero Raoul clapped his hand after witnessing such an amazing spectacle. He wondered if those two enjoyed being on the stage acting as protagonists, while his revenge on Victoria was near its end, with Victoria taking her last breaths. After some time, Raoul was taking that execution cross on his back, while saying that he won't let Victoria die that easily. He claimed to have picked the best place to adorn her see-off, from where people from Agar could also enjoy the gaze upon their former princess, Victoria, as he dragged her onto the ground towards the final destination. Once he reached there, he planted the cross while singing the undying song for Victoria, and also putting her on the cross. Even in her last moments, Victoria was begging for forgiveness, and once Raoul was done, he cleaned his hands and figured it was looking awesome. He decided to name this work of art as the Crucified Process in the Moonlit Night, and laughed on how funny names he could think of. Then it was about time before he would let the scavenging creatures on her, which would play the main role in this new torture device of his. Once he was done preparing, all the animals and scavenging insects went to feed on Victoria's body, while she didn't even have the energy to scream left in her. The beasts tore apart her flesh and the crows gouged out her eyes. And now Raoul stated that her flesh wound will be devoured by the wolves, and no matter what happens to her, she won't die that early and keep enjoying this scene of the most disgusting and painful death ever. Raoul wondered before how things would proceed after he placed the General Brown in the same death, and it seemed that he had already tried it out in his collection of revenge. Although there were still some vacancies left, and the next addition to his revenge collection was already decided, along with these collections of Princess Victoria, Sandler, Brown, and Bennick. 1 month later, the country of Horrobach in the kingdom of Kurz. Inside somewhere in an enslaved demon internment camp, some demon children were being held as slaves, and their slave trader asked her servants to strip these children naked. However, behind her, there was Wendell and shockingly Raoul also standing there as if he was included in this slave trading work. The woman standing there called all these children fine jewels for the business, and while she went and adored them, Raoul seemed to be feeling unsettling. Then Wendell noticed the change in his behavior. Wendell hugged him like bros and said that the more slaves they would sell, the happier they should be. The big woman alerted Wendell that he shouldn't do something like that to Raoul, otherwise he would execute them. To which Wendell replied it would be fine because this guy follows a dumb an eye for an eye rule. So, no matter how much Raoul resents him, he won't lay a hand on him. Raoul sighed and stated revenge was both energy and time-taking thing, so he was fine with anything else as long as his pockets were filled. After that, he went outside to get some air while others would deal with the assessment. But after Raoul got outside, he went to the corner of an isolated wall and started crying while sitting on the ground. Meanwhile, at an arena in the kingdom of Kurz, the fighters were going all out and killing one another, while Raoul was laughing and having fun watching them. He liked the way they kill, but it was a little bit soft according to him. It turns out that the Raoul we saw crying was actually a doppelganger of Raoul, while real Raoul was enjoying himself out here waiting for the next show. After that, Raoul was called out in the castle by His Majesty the King. The royal soldiers let Raoul enter the room where the king was, while also forming a line to show respect for him. Raoul thought it was a bit too late to show him respect, because eventually, all the people living in the capital would be the target of his revenge. Raoul went to see the king, and once he arrived there, he saw that the king was all tied up with magic circles and machines showing his sick condition. The king asked Raoul if he enjoyed the show, to which Raoul replied it was quite passable for now. The king was concerned and wanted to make sure Raoul was satisfied, as Raoul stated that he had a little bit of fun teaching them a little lesson. The guys he got killed at the arena were those soldiers who had burned villages with General Brown, and Raoul made sure to give all of them the deaths they deserved. They also executed the ones who played parts from the sidelines, and Raoul truly found the people of this country crazy to be rejoicing at an execution. The king stated they indeed were, but not as much as Raoul. The king then smiled and stated that the evil of committing unimaginable cruelties was not something that only Raoul could do. Raoul wondered what he was trying to say, to which the king informed him next that they had heard of someone who was pretending to be the hero. Raoul was hunting demons at the frontier. Raoul told him that he was having fun here, so does the king really think it could have been him to do that? The king had already run investigations and confirmed there was an imposter who looked a lot like Raoul. It piqued Raoul's interest, but Raoul was just pretending that he was hearing this for the first time, while he was already aware of all that. The minister Alcott then spoke up his own opinion that it was too quick to tell if this demon hunter was an imposter. The king got offended and asked Alcott, who asked for his opinion, which shook the minister in fear. Then Raoul snapped and broke the neck of that minister right in front of everyone in the court. Others asked Sir Raoul how he could do such a thing in front of the king, to which Raoul replied that those who doubt him deserve punishment. Other speakers in the court stated that even Victoria was punished for killing ministers of the king, but the king said that it was Minister Alcott's fault this time, and he himself apologized to Raoul on his behalf. Raoul stated that was fine, and given that, the king stated they should come back to the main topic regarding the imposter. He informed Raoul that the imposter seemed to be working alongside Raoul's former comrade Wendell, along with a merchant Naked Allingham, who had a large import business in a port city. Raoul kept the first hearing act, while he already knew that as well, since these two were the next targets of his revenge. The king informed Raoul that these two were making huge profits by selling demons as slaves, to which Raoul acted that they were really so low to do that without the permission of the king. King agreed that he couldn't allow them to do whatever they wanted, so King mentioned that he wanted these two to be annihilated and taught a lesson, for which he knew that he won't have to order Raoul to do that. Raoul smirked and looked straight into the eyes of the king, and started walking away while making it clear to the king to not get any ideas, since these two were already his prey from the beginning. As he left, he casted a magic circle around the king's neck and said with cold eyes that he talked too much. The king knew he couldn't take it easy with Raoul, so he kept quiet until Raoul went off. Meanwhile, in the territory of the demons of Hollerbach, at the port city of Tord, the dealings were still happening and the fake hero Raoul was shaking while doing this work of slaves. While he was taking a walk, he looked at the guards of those slaves, treating them like trash and beating them whenever any of them cried. Then Allingham came and said it was gorgeous, according to her, to see an innocent child crying looking terrified. Allingham was so moved by this side, and wanted to lick up all those tears of the demon child. The demon kid was shaking in fear as the guard hit him hard for no reason. Then the sister of that boy stood up for him. Allingham was enchanted to look at this bond of brother and sister, and she ordered the guards to reduce them to nothing. Then fake Raoul spoke up and told them to go easy on those slaves, and Allingham told him it was okay for their work since demons were cheap. Besides, Allingham wished to see those kids in a mess until it made herself more pleased. She felt more intrigued by hitting those near-death demon children, while the fake Raoul clenched his fists after seeing that lowly treatment those kids got for no reason. He had to bite his lips from the inside to make sure not to lose it right here, while Allingham stated this view was delightful for her. After that, the fake Raoul asked her if Wendell would also be participating as well, to which she replied that Wendell was currently in the evaluation. Allingham then asked him if Wendell was one of his revenge targets, to which he replied he was not. However, it was just the tongue of the fake Raoul, not the real one. Then Allingham stated she never expected that the former hero and the great mage Wendell would be working in the demon slavery business, and wondered what would happen if this gets out to the public. The fake Raoul just listened to her trash talk, and stated that he had already seen how painful it would be to live a clean life. After that, he noticed a blood stain inside Allingham's pocket and asked what it was, to which she replied that it was actually the finger of the little girl from before, because she couldn't help it. Allingham just liked this gold finger and had planned on preserving it in her room as a decorative piece. The fake Raoul stated that he would now be going to the bathroom, and while he was walking in his way, he started speeding up and running eventually because it was getting too hard for him to remain calm. So he quickly went to the bathroom and vomited out because he wasn't sure just what the hell was he doing with his life. Then he heard a voice asking if he was feeling a little more refreshed after pulling, and when the fake Raoul looked up at the speaker, he was shocked to see that it was actually the real Raoul standing right in front of him, knowing fully well about the imposter. The fake Raoul didn't expect this meeting to happen, while Raoul asked the fake that he seemed to be going through a lot while disguised as him. The fake one knew it was the real hero Raoul, so he quickly tried to take out his dagger, but before he could get the chance to even make a move, the fake was completely tied up by the dark magic chains, which also disabled him to speak. He was frustrated at being caught like this, while Raoul said that only his frustrated look was somehow a bit of a passing grade as a copy. However, he said it was surely funny to see that the only thing the fake seemed good at was changing appearances, and he might not be aware of the difference in their strengths. So Raoul released him and asked if his reason to imitate him was plausible or not. The fake breathed heavily, and then he lowered down his head and exclaimed that he was truly sorry, because the reason he did all this was for money. He thought that he could make some money if he allied with Allingham and Wendell, and he did so by pretending to be the hero and threatening them. He requested Raoul to spare his life, for which he was willing to do anything. The fake asked how about licking Raoul's shoes as an apology, and he quickly even started to lick his shoes for real and act like a dog totally. Raoul burst into laughter from seeing how low this fake resorted for an apology, and asked just what he thought he was doing with somebody else's face. The fake kept apologizing, and Raoul told him laughingly that he won't kill him, so he didn't need to worry, because Raoul was strictly an avenger, not a mass murderer. However, he wanted the fake to do work for him to repay the debt for borrowing his face, and then Raoul asked him why don't he allow him to prepare his revenge. The fake asked him just what he meant by his revenge, to which Raoul replied he knew what the fake truly desired was not money. The fake tried saying again that he was just a person who used imitation magic to earn some money. Then Raoul silenced him and said that he had enough of his boring lies. Raoul mentioned knowing fully well that the fake actually wanted to see Raoul, for the sake of his revenge, and the fake knew he wouldn't be able to hide it anymore since Raoul could totally read him. So, Raoul released his mouth, and now it seemed like the fake wound answered him. Raoul told him that they would now have a nice lengthy conversation over black tea, and so he took the fake to a place created with his magic. The fake wondered just what this space was, then Raoul just told him to take a seat and drink a sip to clear his mouth, since he was vomiting earlier. The fake hesitantly listened to Raoul's words, and then Raoul stated that they should now start with an introduction as he snapped to reveal the identity of the imposter, who was actually a girl named Ada Taylor. Ada felt something was different, and then she saw her face in the tea that she was back to her original face. Raoul told her that she could now speak frankly in her own voice, and she figured that he could really see everything. Ada asked him how he found out about her identity, to which he replied it wasn't that difficult since there weren't many imitation magic users around, so he just went and checked the country's list of licensed mages. Ada asked how he could check a list that was not accessible to average people, to which he replied that he was a friend of the king, so surely he couldn't be amongst average people. Ada was a bit surprised by the depth of Hero's reach, so she sighed while thinking what was wrong with his majesty. She asked Raoul then how he determined that it was her, and Raoul said there weren't many people, so he just asked around a bit and deduced it. Ada could remember how he could have asked around, as Raoul continued that after he did that, he considered what reasons she might have to become his imposter because there was only so much one could gain from taking his face. And after all that, Raoul simply found her in no time. Raoul mentioned that he already knew that Ada freed the demons while helping out with the slave trafficking, and she also set that up so that Wendell and Allingham's smuggling would be found out by the country. She wanted Raoul to know about it all indirectly in the first place.